Okay, so today is all about inclusive practice. Now, inclusive practice, I don't want you to get, we will touch on SEND today. We'll touch on it, but to do justice to a SEND program, we would have to be, we could do a whole week on this or more because SEND, as you know, is absolutely huge. So when we talk about inclusive practice, it's not just about SEND, it's about inclusion for all, and what inclusion looks like and who is included in that inclusion is all. That will become clear as we go through the day. Some more people coming in. You will always see this slide because these are the values, and this is hope. We hope this is the way that we present. We want the best out of you. We work with integrity, and we expect you to do the same. Working together, the collaborative work, and inspire learning for you and for the children. So you'll always see the values come up at the very, very beginning. Thank you. Now, you will always see the competencies so that you know, and you'll be becoming more and more familiar with these now that you're moving through the program. You'll be looking at these in your competency progression records. And this is what the competencies that today is related to. Again, and linked to the learn that and learn how to statements from the framework. Okay. So today we hope that you will understand the concept of universal design for learning, and that may have been the first time you've heard that phrase, UDL, and basically it's a set of principles that aim to encompass learning for all. So to make the curriculum flexible curriculum and that it's not a one size fits all, which is at the heart of inclusivity. Hopefully you will develop your understanding more of inclusion and how the teaching adapts to that, what diverse classrooms and rich environments look like. We will have like I say, it's only a touch on this, but so understanding a range of common types. I think raising your awareness, I think more than developing the understanding more deeply of common types of SEND, and how to adapt, practice, and intervene. We will be doing a whole day on adaptive teaching, so we will be visit it in more depth as we go along. But these days are we're raising awareness and we're delving into it, but you end up having more questions than answers because and as it should be, because as these areas are so deep and so complex. So you can read that. Okay, you're engaging in tasks. You'll be considering evidence as always, and it will be a blended day. With that being said, let's have a look at what that looks like. So we will try to keep to timings as much as possible. Again, when we come to the end, we'll look at the evaluations. But if we can shave any time off for you, then we will. But the day ends fairly early anyway, so it's not a bad day. But you can see there's lots of discussion, there's lots of independent tasks, so a completely blended day. And I know somebody's already put in the chat that they've got to leave at around 2:15 or something. And of course, you've got to do what you've got to do. Moving on. So just a quick discussion then. We go to the next slide, Lee. Just want to look at these statistics. So, I mean, this was 2023, 3 years on from that. You see those statistics there. So if you think about, I don't know, if you think about a class of 30, maybe, and of course it's not exact, but on average, if you think about a class of 30, you might have one child with an education, health and care plan, and four children, that probably need one or have got special educational needs, sort of five in total. Now, there is a trend, a massive increase since 2016, and a huge leap over the last few years. The most common type of need for a plan is autistic spectrum disorder, and the SEM for speech and language. But I just want you to reflect for a moment, and chip in and share what your actual experience is, in the schools you're in, or where you've been before, of those kind of figures. What are we seeing in schools? What's your experience? Somebody want to put something in the chat, or somebody want to chip in? Just turn your microphone off if you want to speak, or put your hand up. Becky, thank you. So you have 13, so you've got 23 in a class. Is that right, Becky?
Yeah, well, I've got 23 children in the class because they have two form entries of 24. 13 of the children are on EHCP plans. More have got SPOA. Most of them are also on speech and language. And of those 23, 17 are EAL as well.
Yeah, so just to so that makes for a very complex and a class that certainly needs to have that that inclusivity and that universal design. But just for everybody else, not to confuse EAL and put them in the SEN bracket, because they could have in English as additional language and have a special educational need, but they're not the same thing, and that's often something that people confuse the two things when they first start out, if they haven't got experience in teaching. So just to make sure that those are two separate. Yes, thank you, Becky. And that's really above the average then, Becky, isn't it? And what year group is that?
Yeah, it is year one, so they
Year,
are 2020 birthdays.
Right, so and they've already got EHCPs at
Yeah.
year one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, in one way, that's good because
They get
it's
some sort
early intervention. It's been spotted early. They've already got their plan. So in one way, that's very good, almost unheard of. So yeah, thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
Uh, I can share a little bit.
Yeah, please.
I worked as a TA for a year and a half, and I found that uh, so the schools that have like a resource center, um, where they can create like specialist provision for send kids or kids with EHCPs, are much more effective than ones where they've got like work, TAs sort of following kids around schools, or kids who are more suited for special schools, but stay in like a sort of mainstream classroom.
Yeah, I think, if schools are, fortunate enough to have specialist provision, of course, that's going to benefit everybody. But I think that, more and more and more the government are pushing towards, you know, uh, children being integrated into mainstream, and for teachers to be, more skilled at managing. This is not me saying this. This is coming from direct from the government. There's lots of money going to be pumped in to the profession very shortly, to upskill teachers in, how they manage these things. But yes, I take your point that special provision is certainly beneficial for many children.
Well,
Um,
because what was quite nice, but one of the places I worked around Christmas, and the place I'm working currently, is that I'll have different plans for the different kids. So some kids would really struggle in the classroom, while others can be sort of integrated throughout the day, or a couple of them they've had real success stories with children who maybe in like year one and reception arrived and were just unable to cope in a classroom, but now they're in like year two, year three,
yeah.
and they're flying.
They're integrated, yeah. So
Yeah.
so they've got it right there, haven't they? They've got specialist provision and they're integrating them back into the classrooms. I'm just having a look at the chat to see what we've got in there, to see what this.
We've got Jane has got two children in a year five class, and there's obviously a large difference between them and the rest of the class, which I think is an increasingly common situation as well. Owen, proportions similar to the national situation in their class, so that's interesting as well. We've got the the first conversation, Pam, that you mentioned with that huge amount of need, and then like one that's the national average. And obviously, with it being an average, there must be some people that are much older.
Yeah,
There's got to
absolutely.
be, really. So
Yeah,
be
absolutely. And there's
interesting to see. Yeah.
that comment there from I don't know who it's from, Samira, the increase in delayed speech and autism in children
Yeah.
starting nursery, and that seems to be a nationwide problem as well. That there's an increase in, you know, the children that are coming in with speech and language and autism, etc. So it looks as though, yeah, just as you say, Lee, proportions above. I don't think upskilling is necessarily the solution. Teachers know and understand the children really well. What they need is support with the HCPs. Yeah, I think that, you know, I think there's an argument for upskilling teachers. I certainly do think there's an argument for that, but it's not the whole solution. It certainly isn't the whole solution, but neither is the solution to just put loads and loads of TAs in, you know, without the correct training. So I think it needs more consultation. It needs more thinking about, you know, rather than the government having a knee-jerk reaction to it and, you know, throwing money at it, which, you know, that we don't know what the level of training is going to be. We don't know what it's going to look like. You know, whether it'll be adequate or whether it'll be box ticking, you know, we really don't know at this point what it's going to look like. But there's certainly, you know, at the beginning stages of recognising that there is a national crisis with SEND, and, you know, something needs to happen. And many teachers that I work with certainly don't feel skilled enough to manage some of the complex needs that they're having to manage, unfortunately. And so, yeah, training may be or may not be the answer, but certainly, you know, it may be part of it, and a very small part of it. Yes, possibly being scrap. Yeah, not stretching. All of that I agree with. Yeah. 3 in my class who are taking it some morning as a struggle within the classroom environment. Yeah. And I think, you know, this is what the universal design for learning, you know, is really supposed to be addressing, that, you know, we can't fit square pegs into round holes. And for too long, we've had a one-size-fits-all approach to teaching, and that everybody's expected to do the same thing at the same time with minor adaptations. But, you know, it's limited to what a teacher can do. It's the whole curriculum that needs shaping. And I think when you look at the activity for universal, you know, the universal design principles, that will be apparent. You can adapt your lessons and you can do, but it's the curriculum, it's the whole thing that needs to change. And, you know, we do recognise this because we are very in touch with what is going on in schools. I don't have any who wish to be sent. Okay, so yes, we're talking about the averages, and then we've got, you know, so that would be the case, wouldn't it? No HCP yet. Parents sometimes not on board. Absolutely, makes it hard to help the child reach their full potential. Yeah. Yes, there are parents who do not want their children labelled. You do not want the stigma around it. Other parents at the other end of the spectrum will push for a label and a plan because it will paper over some other cracks that may be there, and they really, really want a diagnosis because they say all of this behaviour is because of this and this and this, and not necessarily the case. More investigation needs to be done. So it's both parents at both ends of the spectrum, but, you know, whatever the case, you know, the parents are, you know, clearly struggling. So thank you for that. Thank you for that input. And I can see from your contributions, you know, this has provoked a lot of discussion around it, because it's a huge problem that's going to impact on, you know, everybody, all the stakeholders involved in education. Thank you. Okay, let's move on. And I'm keeping my eye on the chats as well, so I know I'm taking in your comments. So we're going to go into our first independent task. So what you're going to do is you're going to have a look in your resource pack. There's a research summary of the UDL, and there is a video, a YouTube video it's a very, very brief video, and it just gives you a sort of an overview of what it is. And then you've got an example of, in your resource packs, of the children with the, the lesson about butterflies. But it's asking you to take the principles of those design principles and think of a lesson that you've got coming up, of those three. Think of a lesson that you've got coming up and how you might adapt that lesson you've got coming up using those principles. So if you look at the principles and you look at how you may present it differently to meet different needs. So instead of presenting it as a one size fits all, how could you present it so that you accommodate more of the learners more of the time, and actually how they access explanations? How could you change it so that there's more access to those explanations and they understand more? How could they apply their learning? So, for instance, are they all going to write, or is that one child that hears write and wants to go and hide under the desk? How could they present the knowledge that they know in a very different way to writing? How can we engage the children so that how do we keep them engaged and hone in on their particular interest or what they're actually good at? So you can see that you can change your lessons, you can make those adaptations, but within the confines of a curriculum that you've already got, that you don't have a lot of control over. So it's small adaptations that you make, and some schools are really good at it. Some schools have never heard of it, and everything in between. So I want you for about 45 minutes to have a look at that research, have a look at the video, consider a lesson that you've got coming up, and think about the adaptations you can make there. And then we're going to come back for 5 minutes, and then also just to come back, and then we're going to put you into breakout rooms of about 4 to discuss your lessons and those adaptations. And if we've got time, maybe we'll cut the independent time to 40 minutes, Lee, so that we've got time for them to share at the very end about some of those experiences. So 40 minutes independent, then straight into breakout instead of coming back, I think. Is that possible, Lee?
We'll have to come back first in order to
do the
assemble
breakout.
groups.
Okay,
Yeah.
Come back, then we'll put you into groups. Then you'll come back, and then we'll share as a whole group. So
Fantastic.
Is anybody, I'm sorry, Becky, this is the first transition, but I hope I've explained it and how it's going to work. So
Okay.
Independent work, you've got the resources in your resource pack. We are here if you want to ask us any questions, and then you do your independent work, pop back so we can put you into the breakout rooms, and then you'll discuss your lesson plans. Is that clear? Does anyone need any more explanation about it?
It is. I'll just jump on that as well, Pam.
Yes.
You're going to be sent into a room on your own. There'll be nobody else there. It'll just be you. So it's like an independent thinking space, really. That will automatically close after the time and bring you back to the main group, where we'll collect our thoughts together, refocus, and then send you back off. So first things first, you go into a room on your own. Okay, there'll be nobody else there, and then we'll come back together as a group to reconnect and then get into the group discussions. Okay.
Hina, you've got a question?
Yes, Pam. Could you please tell me, where do I find a resource pack? Sorry, I may have missed that.
I've put it into chat. It's in the chat so you can download the document there, but it's always on Mosaic as well on the training plan section, the core training day.
And it's page 11, I think. Page 11.
Page 11
on this version. Page 11 is the link to the video.
We always give those with a bit of a caveat, plus or minus 2 pages, depending on which one it is. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I found them. Thank you.
Okay. Right. So I'm going to set the rooms off now, and I'll just set that time. I'll do a little bit less, actually. I'll do 38 minutes. Okay. 30-second countdown. Okay, there we go. So you should be disappearing now, everybody. Off to your own little room. Sorry,
I'm being a bit dappy. I'm just on the training plan in Mosaic. Do you know where it is? So
Yeah,
I'd rather you.
you should have a core training day, training plan this
So
week, and you'll
the
have core
current week,
training day. Yeah, current
sorry, is it
week.
under? Is under current week for learning or culture for learning week
Whatever
26.1?
it's this week, whatever the start of the
Right.
week
Okay.
is, and then you should have core training on the like
Oh, I've got you. Sorry. Yeah,
yeah,
I'll be in
yeah.
that.
Is
All
that
right. See you
okay?
later then. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no
I
worries. I'll
can
see you
go
in
now.
about
Bye.
that 30 odd minutes.
All right.
Thank
You
you.
you can kick me out now.
Oh, you should just be able to join, I think, Josh. Is there a
Oh,
room
I click
there?
cancel. I click cancel
All
on it.
right, okay. I'll get you to join it now. There we are. Just take us back to that first question. What does the term inclusion mean to you? And again, you've been brilliant in responding today. Thinking about those quotes that we've had up on the screen, would anybody like to offer any thoughts before we move on? So, inclusion. Do any of those particularly resonate? Are there anything that's causing people challenges or something that they'd like to maybe question? Again, you pop things in chat, or if you'd like to unmute, that would be great.
I think inclusion is a better way to provide reasonable adjustment for every child to access the curriculum and support a sense of belonging because they have to feel for they are in the classroom environment. So that's very important to achieving their potential within an inclusive environment. So we are planning for those things to be provide how learners' abilities and different backgrounds and their needs for removing their barriers.
Thank you. So that's a common theme that comes across, particularly in some of those quotes on that page. Thank you, Shamil. Does anybody else like to share any thoughts on what inclusion means to you, the term inclusion? I think they're quite powerful statements, these, Pam. I don't know if you agree. Some of them are very, they're asking a lot, I think, which is great. We always need to try to do our very best. Anybody else, any thoughts before we jog on a little?
I think, Lee, that
Yeah,
if you look at inclusion in this very broad way,
yeah.
we're really talking about individual curriculums almost, aren't we? So,
Uh-huh.
it is very hard to manage. And if you think about inclusion going beyond the
Yeah,
SEND spectrum, which
yeah,
is what today is all about, really,
yeah.
SEND being a part of it, and just to consider that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think for me, looking at this UNICEF definition here, is there's a that's suggesting an awful lot. It's all children in the same school, regardless of needs. That's a very sort of powerful standpoint to stand at, and I think something that is really aspirational to get to. And I think we'll have lots of conversations over the coming weeks and months together about how we head towards that, head towards that thing as easily as possible. So we're going to jump into now, and we're going to have a little sort of whole group activity in a moment. But thinking about those definitions, thinking about those thoughts, we've got a little slide here on inclusive classrooms. Okay, and again, these are just some pointers for us to look at. So, inclusive classrooms create a learner-friendly environment to support all pupils, foster an atmosphere that motivates children to learn. Legislation states that no children should be excluded from participating or learning in the classroom environment, and that every attempt must be made to minimise the barriers that they may have to learning. The Equality Act in 2010 states that schools have a statutory duty to make reasonable adjustments to cater for the learners. And the statutory framework for inclusion in the national curriculum emphasises the need to identify and remove barriers to learning and participation. So that's what
the paperwork and what various documents say about an inclusive classroom. And we're going to try something here. I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put up a whiteboard. Oh, I hope I'm going to put up a whiteboard. We'll have a go, Pam. We'll see what happens with this. But the beauty of this is that what you think about, okay, what would we see within an inclusive classroom? Thinking about those definitions, thinking about this learner-friendly environment, an environment that motivates all children to learn. If I walked into that classroom, what things would I actually see? And again, so think back to your own practice, with that experience in schools, in previous jobs, in other areas, what types of things would you want to see went into it? So I'm going to have a go at sharing a whiteboard, and this is a first for us here. So let's have a look. I'm a little bit nervous, as you can possibly tell. Where are we? I can't even find the whiteboard at the moment. Where are we?
It's under more.
Under more. Oh, there we go. All right, why can't I see my whiteboard anyway? It's not there. Oh, can you see whiteboard, Pam? Because
yeah, under more, halfway down.
Right.
Whiteboard.
Right, it's not there for me.
All right, so okay.
Do you want to have a go, Pam? Start a whiteboard, click it on. This is what we like to see. We're constantly adapting to the learning environment that we have, and why I can't see it, I do not know.
Okay, there's the whiteboard.
Have a look. Let's see if something comes up within there. Has that popped up for people? I can't.
Now I've got Sophie's name on there.
Oh, I can see it now. Hold on, I'm going to try it with me. Okay, let's have a go, see if I can do it. Okay, continue. There we are. Are people seeing that? Can people see that whiteboard? Oh, I've got some names. Okay, the way that this works is you can, on the menu at the side over here, let me just make it a little bit bigger if I can. You can click on like a post-it note. And you can add thoughts. So if you could click over here, again, as you'll see, I'm just going to try to drag that down a little bit. You can click on your post-it notes, click on one, drag it over here. And if you start typing, you can put your thoughts on there. So if people have a go, what things might we see on these things? Displays are coming up on there. Are you seeing that, Pam? Is it working?
I am, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. There we go. We've got some little drawings as well. I like that. We can have some little doodles while we're on. Different learning resources. Again, visual timetables coming up. Again, I can zoom out so people can see everywhere. Space for each child, table with their resources on. Thank you. Some little writing over here. Workstation, sensory corner, visual aid, now and next cards.
Why are some of the post-its tiny and some big? That's just
I think you can drag them out, stretch them on the corners. Okay. So I think it's a personal preference. I'll try and zoom in and out as much as possible to get the most. PEX systems there coming up. Group tables, individual tables we've got in an inclusive classrooms. Displays are in different formats, some written, some image heavy. Oh, areas for regulation stations, things, resources to support regulations.
We have a very knowledgeable group.
We do, yeah. Quiet spaces, thank you. Oh, sensory corners, sensory resources within the classrooms. That's good, thank you. Fidget toys, maybe, for those who need them. Again, that sensory element being addressed in an inclusive classroom. Oh, I'm going to zoom into this little tiny one up here that I can't quite see. Areas where the children can sit and read. Okay, so again, a different thing within over there. Visual timetables, group tables. Thank you. Okay, so that's a really useful way there to look at and to things within there. And just I'll leave that on the screen just for a moment. And just have a think about it. In your classrooms where you're observing, where you're teaching presently, which of these elements do you have? Are there some that you think, oh, maybe my classroom will benefit because of maybe looking at that idea or exploring that avenue, something that you wouldn't have thought about as
Yeah,
it goes.
lovely ideas, lovely
Yeah,
ideas.
yeah, there are some good ones there. Thank you. So that will be on the video available as it comes out anyway. Layout of the classroom, I think that's massively important. I think sometimes people, you create the environment, and that starts with the physicality of the zone and the way it looks first and foremost, and then the relationships and things build on top of it. So how things are set up, how children get to resources, things like that. We have some cards for students that say, "Oh, I need a bit of help. Can I just have 5 minutes? Just leave me be for a little while." So again, that relationships that we talked about last the previous training session. So again, some really, really good engagement there. Thank you very much. I'm just going to close that off. Now, I'm not sure whether it will go back. It's probably just come back to me. So I'm going to share the screen again, and we'll get back onto the particular one. Are people seeing that whole
Yeah,
screen again? Thank you very
yeah.
much. So, tell you what, my heart rate has gone through the roof there, Pam. I don't know what's going on, but anyway,
I think that was very successful. It's
well, it wasn't bad. I think, well, we might do a little bit more. We'll get some feedback on there. Pop into chat. Do we like the whiteboards? Do we not like the whiteboards? I thought it was interesting, and again, lots of people bouncing on top of them there. Lovely, thank you. So we've had that inclusive classroom. We've had that brilliant insight from yourselves of the actual. Okay, we banned this word around, but what might we see in that classroom? And thank you very much for being able to do that with you. So I'm going to come up now. We've got a couple of slides to discuss before we go into break time. And the first one, when I can press the right button, Lee, is this one here. And it says inclusion is. I'm just going to give you a second just to have a look at that slide. And again, these are some other definitions. This is from a TESS resource within there. And this builds on the earlier definitions and ideas. Inclusion is. A really useful thing to look at there. I'm going to go on to the next slide.
Sorry, what's an IEP?
An IEP is a term, it's called an individual education plan. So
Okay.
they might be termed now as pupil support plans or IBPs, or what nomenclature do you hear, Pam, where you go into?
I'm not hearing IEPs.
I haven't heard that for a long time.
No, I haven't heard that for a long time. I'm hearing individual provision
Yeah.
plans.
Can I share
Mostly.
something with the school where I worked before? The individual education plans look like setting target for term
Yes.
basis for children, and very small targets, whichever they achieve, then we can prepare the new target for small steps to be adapt to individual child. And that's the reason of then the SENCO end of the term, she has to make a meeting with the parents to share their ideas, opinions, and how they comfort with that targets to support in the outside the school. So these are the things we can make it for the individual. Yes.
Thanks, Shamila. I think lots of schools call them different things now, and it used to be IEPs, didn't it, Lee?
Yeah, that used to be the
slide
standard
might be a little
nomenclature.
bit older, but they're called lots of different things, but the same principle, Shamila. Thank you.
It is. It's very much about how you plan to meet the needs of those individual children. So again, one of we never keep things simple in education, Pam, do we? We like to just change names and change acronyms, but that individual plan to meet pupils' needs. So there's another graphic here, which again tries to explain what an inclusive classroom is. Again, a bit, another way of explaining this. We've got the inclusive classroom at the center, and then around the outside are some of the key elements, key things that you'd like to expect within there. So it's a welcoming environment, it's accessible, it actively promotes well-being, lots of those little comments you made on the whiteboard earlier about how making sure children can opt in and out at the right level, feeling confident to do so. Inclusive classroom is every student is represented on that learning continuum and is able to access and enter the learning. The classroom is connected to the broader community. Okay, so your classroom is aware of the context, is aware of the broader school community, the broader public community, and their needs and wants and challenges. Inclusive classroom is a structure is in place to engage with and resolve challenges in a constructive and respectful manner. And an inclusive classroom is the one where everyone has a voice. So we've spent that sort of half an hour together as a group with this initial question that we set off with, which was, what does the term inclusion mean to you? And I'd be interested again just before we finish and break for lunch, if anybody would like to sort of unmute. Any thoughts after that half-hour sort of session where we've started just to scratch the surface of inclusion and defining what that might mean? Has anybody's thoughts developed, been further cemented, new areas that they've never really considered it before? And again, we'd love to hear from you.
I think somebody had said in the chat earlier that that it's sort of broadening their perspective of what inclusivity actually means, and
Absolutely, yeah.
When we come back after break, we'll expand on that a bit more. That inclusivity is not just about one thing, and I think that slide represents that very well, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It as it goes through, but so it's such a huge area that will literally, appear on every single training day that we have coming through. I think the obviously the latest Ofsted framework's out, and they've changed their definition of what they expect to see. It always used to be high quality teaching. Prior to that, it was quality first, but it goes on. But anyway, just a change. But it was high quality teaching. It's now high quality inclusive teaching is kind of the phrase that permeates through that document. So you can see how the focus is very much on that meeting of pupil needs as much as possible, making those reasonable adjustments to try and do as much as you possibly can. So I say it's been a really, really busy morning. There's been a lot of independent work and thought processes, some big areas for you to discover here. What I'm going to do, obviously, we're due to have around about a 15-minute break now. In order to help try and manage that, we're going to send you to your rooms again. You haven't been naughty. And that's a word I don't use, Pam. I don't know why that came out. But anyway, apologies for that. We're going to send you to your rooms in a positive way. It'll be an individual room, and we'll set that for 15 minutes. So it will automatically bring you back into the main group after that break time. Please use it for a comfort break. Use it to review any of the materials that you may have got into or not. And I say we look forward to moving on with this with Pam after break in about 15 minutes. So I'm just going to try to set up the breakout rooms now as much as possible. I'm going to add this in. 1 second. There we go. So we should be opening all the rooms. We'll see you back in 15 minutes. You will automatically be brought back to us. Do have a comfort break. Do stretch your legs. Do get some time away from the screen. Can't wait to see you after the break. Take care. Again, please do join the rooms.
Still got some
We've
left.
got a few people. Elizabeth, Paul, Mariam.
I think they may have just
Right.
turned
What
the
I'll, what
cameras
I'll
off
do,
in
I'm going to pop them into the waiting room, and then they'll be able to ask to come back in, and we'll see. Um, so there's 3 there. Right.
Right.
Okay,
We've still got a lot of people without their cameras on, haven't we?
yeah, yeah.
So
I think we'll just have to keep mentioning it and seeing.
keep mentioning it,
You know, I
yeah.
wouldn't, it's difficult because the irony is you can't see them when you're speaking anyway. So that's the hard thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's
Yeah.
just good
I mean,
manners, isn't it? Why
yeah,
have we turned
yeah.
our cameras off?
Well, they might be grateful or not see mine every day. You never
Right,
know.
I shall
So
see you.
thank you for that. Yeah, so I think it was it's a big
Yeah, it
moment,
was
isn't
good.
it?
Good
Yeah,
use of the
yeah.
whiteboard. I liked it.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll have a go at that, and I think it's they definitely got more kind of. It was a bit more of a feeling of
Interaction. Yeah.
yeah, you know,
Breaks it up a
it's
bit.
not because it's not linear, is it? It's kind of everybody
Yeah.
contribute at once.
Yeah. And James said, James put in the chat, very inclusive. So it's an
Right, okay.
inclusive interaction
Yeah.
tool. So yeah, good.
Oh,
Right, I shall
good.
see you in about
Yeah,
12 minutes.
approximately 12 minutes, 18 seconds.
Right, lovely.
Yeah, we'll see you then. See you in a bit.
See you then. Thanks, Lee. I'm going to shave this one down a little bit, Lee, because otherwise you're
Yeah.
not going to get time to do your bit. So I will just
All right.
shave it
What am
down.
I on? What am I on? What am I on?
So you're doing the graduated approach when
Oh, that's after lunch, is it?
no, it's is it? Oh, I thought it was before. No, is it after? So this goes straight into lunch.
Yeah, I think so.
No, I don't.
Yeah. Lunch is after activity 3, and then activity 4 is a graduated response.
Okay,
So
brilliant.
yeah, that's fine. Yeah. Oh gosh, been full of a cold. I just can't.
Can't shake it.
Yeah. Obviously, all the people are online now and hear me talking about my cold. There we go. Apologies for that,
But
everybody.
at least they can't catch it. They can't catch it online.
No, that's true. Yeah, dear me. Let's just see.
Everyone back?
I think so.
Okay. Are we
Yeah, I think we're good to go, Pam.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Hope you had time to put the vacuum round and put a load of washing on and get your dinner ready for later and things like that you can't do when you're doing a face.
What's a vacuum? What's a vacuum?
Right, so welcome back. Now we're going to expand a little more on the conversations that we've been having around those learning environments and what they might look like in a bit more detail and share some of your own experiences. And then we're going to have a discussion about that, go through some slides, and then you've got a couple of tasks to do, which you will find if you want to start getting it ready, which you will find on page 13. I think it starts on page 13. There's 2 tasks. So we'll go into that at the end of the slides after we've had the discussion and explored it, the learning environments a little bit more. So if we move on. Okay, so it's not just about, as we know, it's not just about the physical environment, but certainly the physical environment is a big part of it. And Lee and I were having a discussion before we started the day about how schools are, if the older schools, the Victorian buildings are maybe not fit for purpose in lots of respects for this sort of inclusive environment. And lots of the new schools that are being built have thought more about. I went to visit a school recently where the corridors were really wide, where there's like a pirate ship, in the corridor where children can go into it and they can read in these little nooks, where the corridor was just carpeted in artificial grass. Oh, it was heaven. It was absolutely wonderful. So the designers had really thought about, this sort of inclusivity and how children might like to learn, as opposed to, you may be in schools with very tight corridors. I think the classrooms are very small. There's not much room to spread out and change the table layouts and things like that. So, but certainly, the physical environment is very important. I often go into classrooms where the tables are set up in rows, which suits some children because they like to work like that individually, but doesn't suit all the children. Classrooms where it's all groups, and that doesn't suit the children. And I think it's always a good idea to consider those children who get overstimulated very quickly, and the classrooms where you see are very well organized, where the children know where everything is, where there's no unnecessary clutter, and where it's conducive to inclusive learning. There's not jumpers and bits and pieces strewn all over the desks and bags and water bottles, but it's all very neatly ordered, which is conducive to inclusive learning. So considering the physical environment, you have very little control over things like that in most of your classrooms at the moment, but one day you will have your own classroom. So something to consider. Next slide. That's interesting. My teacher recently changed from rows to tables, and engagement and behaviour has improved. So, she's looking at the need of the class and what might work there. displays that are current and relevant. I mean, let's expand on the display notion for a moment, because it's changed, all the decades that I've been in teaching. It's certainly gone through lots of different cycles about requirements of, for displays. And once upon a time, displays were everything, and they were draped in fabrics, and they were 3D, and they were interactive, and that was the requirement, and they were double, treble layered, and all sorts of things with displays. And some of them were absolutely beautiful and took hours to create. I remember that.
To jump on that, Pam, I had when I was graduating, I had to make a display, and I didn't triple mount something, so I had to redo it. That takes me back. That was my pass or fail. It wasn't triple mounted, and it wasn't quite accurate enough. But still,
that was the thing that back in those days, and it's gone through those cycles. And I remember having to do a display. It was on rocks, and to create a mountain out of a mini mountain out of, well, I won't go into it. I won't bore you with it all, but they used to be a really big thing. And I think they've gone through different cycles, and now I think that the recommendations now is sort of less is more, not sort of too overstimulating, not twinkled to death, not laminated to death. I think one of the good tests to do is to sit down where the children sit, because as a teacher, you're at the front mostly. I mean, you do walk around the classroom and everything, but mostly you're at the front. And so you're looking that way, and so you can see what's around you. But to put yourself in the position of the child and sit at their level where they're sitting, look straight ahead and see what they're seeing. And it's quite an eye-opener, because quite often the teacher will put lots of things around that make it look really pretty, lots of things around the whiteboard, lots of information, lots of things everywhere. And it can be really overstimulating for some children.
It's interesting, Pam. We've got Rachel has commented that the school she's currently in, they've obviously pulled back from the really colourful, overstimulating displays. Somebody's commenting on, all writing's got to be cursive, reflecting what is expected of the children. Becky mentions they've got to be informative, i.e. kind of like basically as a teaching aid, so a working wall, for want of another term, not just displayed work. Some really interesting comments. And again, like that celebration of work is in the corridors, so it's a public celebration. The classroom's a working environment. Again, that's following on from that comment. So lots of really interesting thoughts.
I think lots of schools have taken down, display boards for that reason. Lots of schools have taken down too many display boards. One, for workload issues in the corridors and things, because they're not people are not timetabled into, putting a Christmas one up, an Easter one up, an Eid one up, and this one and that one up, because of the workload. But also, for so that it's not overstimulating. But different schools will have different policies on what their displays look like. So just expand on that for a moment, and share in the chat, what the policies are, in your school for displays. What are the expectations, and what are you seeing in Becky's cat's joined us. I think my dog keeps trying to do the same, Becky. So just hello, Steve. Let's just share in the chat what your policies are in your schools. You've already shared a few. That the cursive writing's got to. I don't know if that's got to reflect the handwriting style of the school.
Sam, can I share something about displays? Making with the nature friendly. Not like handmade, our handmade things, instead of getting ready-made stuffs. Using the color codes is important, and very less pictures, and the speech bubbles are available for children who can write their opinions on the display if they can participate that. And the allergy information is very important for the classroom. Teachers or any new visitor come to the classroom, then they know which child needs that support, and they can quickly get the, for example, of allergy or EpiPen or anything is important for the displays. And no staples. Try to put the blue tag instead of staples, and that was some child is unaware of pulling things, and it might be hurt for the child. So display is important for those things. And yes, the wow board is important for celebration of children's work day to day, and they can give the house points for children to reward. And also the sensation board is important for how you can manage for behavioral control for child to raising up the stars or moving down or moving up, things like that. Yes, and
Thank you.
yes, thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Shamila. Thank you for that contribution.
Yeah.
And again,
I think
early years is especially important to think about, what you're putting on, whether the children can read it, who it's for, how it's used, how interactive it is, what levels those things are. I can see in the chat the themes coming through about the working walls, so that working walls supporting the learning, and that they're recent and relevant, that they're added to support learning, so they're functional displays that I'm seeing. There's a nice one there. Pupils' journey through the year, my goodness, follows they have an art wall, so they've got lots of celebration. The only display at the front of the class is the day's timetable. Okay, and so that's minimal. Another one that's talking about it's a small school, so maybe that the displays are not updated as timely, in a timely way. That's true, Owen. Older schools with lots do not have much space. People used to hang up washing lines, across the classroom, but with the health and safety things, you don't see so much of that anymore. We have lots of visual timetables now. Display boards less colourful, filled with information, and it's interesting when you go into the secondary schools as well, how it changes. So very, very little celebration, much more informative, sometimes nothing, depending on the subject and the teacher. But you can see that it certainly seems to become less important as you move through. But lots of schools seem to have lots of different practices, and that's your experience of them. What do you think is the best practice, though? What's the best practice for displays for an inclusive environment? Not to look pretty, not to, thinking about that theme of inclusivity. What for you would be the best practice? What's right for your cohort that time? Yes, certainly. Anything else in the chat there? For an inclusive classroom, what would be the best practice? Thinking about, the different needs, thinking about children, that they feel included, that they are reflected in the environment, different cultures, yes. Reflected working walls to support learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think some really insightful comments there, Pam, in that, again, we think about, your cohort will need different things at different times, possibly.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? At
Absolutely.
sometimes all about business, other times all about celebration, if you're trying to encourage and recognise. So it's a really interesting thing. But I think the theme, like you've picked up on that, as a whole, the definite focus on less is more, I think, has come through the comments in the chat there, and focused on a particular purpose. But it's also nice to see that, from my point of view, that celebration at times as well. Children have worked hard. They've produced something that they're really proud of.
Owen makes a good point there about all abilities reflected, not just mostly impressive examples of their work, and also the process. It's certainly, if you're looking at writing, the process is as important as the end result. Eye level, dual language, for EAL, yeah, or dual coding,
Dual
only
coding, yeah.
useful information and reducing overstimulations and organisation, yeah, absolutely. And there's a big push now. You go into the classrooms now and see lots of Hessian everywhere. And I think I mentioned it before. It might have been with somebody else, but lots of Hessian. And I think that the sort of Instagram classrooms and Pinterest classrooms and things like that. But I think the main push behind that is to minimise the colours, and to have sort of a plain background so that it's more natural, and less stimulating.
Yeah.
But
think
it
what's
is up to each school how they conduct it.
I think what's really encouraging for me, Pam, is looking, we've got these, fantastic individuals online today, and from seems to be a very inclusive starting point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly that hasn't always been the case.
No.
Whereas everybody here seems to be very much starting from, actually, it's my core job to get the best out of everybody in here. And
It is
which
heartening.
ways
It is
can I do that?
heartening.
It's really, really, really good. So you should be
It's
proud of
heartening to
yourselves,
see.
because that way, that's how we'll eventually get there.
Get there, yeah. Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just talking about, the recommendations, natural commercial resources available. And I think this is important, but like I say, a lot of this will be out of your control, but it's for you to consider when you eventually get your own classrooms. It's not that far off, when you have your own classrooms, and how you plan your classroom and how much time you think about, planning your classroom for inclusivity. And one of the things that's always nice to see is that the resources stored and labelled and organised so that children can access them. And that is, that's really important for inclusivity, and that children don't have to ask. Children know where things are, and it makes for a really nice, organised, smooth running classroom to get organised right at the beginning of the school year, and to keep that going through the school year. And Lee's the same. We go into lots of different classrooms and see the difference when there is good organisation and then when there is poor organisation, how that impacts on the children quite directly. So that's a really important thing. Next slide. It's not all about it's not all about the physical environment, but also an inclusive environment is allowing and enabling children to take risks, that mistakes are signposts for new learning, that you can speak up, you can have a voice in the classroom. You're not going to get ridiculed for a wrong answer by the other children mostly. So it's up to the teacher to create that really safe learning environment where it's safe to make a mistake, where it's natural to work with others, and that they are taught, not just expected, to work with other children, and those skills of cooperation, negotiation, and sharing, which many children find extremely difficult. And they seem to do it more naturally in early years, and they come through and that they lose those skills, and they're not skills that do come naturally. And so it's up to the teachers to actually teach those skills. Okay, thank you. Next slide. Okay, and that's just reinforcing what I said about supporting children to recognise that they can make mistakes, but also creating an environment where children can monitor their own learning. And we'll talk about metacognition as we go through the programme and the different days, but how children can monitor their own learning and know when they've made a mistake, or if they are struggling. And I think someone put something in the comments about, I think it was on the whiteboard, about how they ask for help, and the different things that they can do. And I know lots of schools have different ways of children monitoring their own support, really. What's that acronym? The B4... B4 me, three before me.
Three before me.
Before
Yeah,
me.
we get there
That was it.
eventually.
Three
There
before
we
me.
are.
And I think the three B's, isn't it? Is what are the three B's? It was one's ask a buddy.
Brain and buddy, I think
first
I was
B?
it. But I
The
don't know.
first B, I can't even remember what it is. Does anybody put it in the chat? Can you remember what that first B is? The three before me. I've come to it. I
Is it
will
book,
come to it.
book,
Is it
buddy,
brain? Oh no, brain,
brain,
book,
book,
buddy,
book,
or
buddy,
yeah, yeah,
boss?
yeah.
There was four
So
B's in our one
yeah,
anyway.
so they're
Lots of different ways.
encouraged, you know, and whatever it is and whatever the acronym is, but children are encouraged to take certain actions before they go straight to the teacher to ask for help, or sit there with their hand up. There are different things where they can regulate their support and their learning, and building in those metacognitive strategies and self-help strategies. And lots of schools have different ways of doing that. Moving on. Now, it moves very quickly, and this has always surprised me on this day of how this moves very quickly. But I think with the introduction of the reading framework, I think it was 24, I think it was 2024, 23, I can't remember, but it's a very
23, 24, yeah.
recent, was it 20? Yeah, a recent introduction of a new reading framework from the DFE, and lots of recommendations in there. And one of the main themes running all the way through it was reading for pleasure. And we saw the reintroduction, because these had been phased out for some time, but we saw the reintroduction of book corners, reading nooks, where children have been encouraged to go and read for pleasure instead of just their reading scheme book and learning to read, but actually accessing a wide range of books. What does that look like in your classrooms or in your school, in terms of book corners and reading for pleasure, encouraging a really rich, literature-rich, book rich environment? What does that look like in your classroom or your school? Is it something you're seeing? Is it something you're not seeing? What are you seeing?
Sort of from the schools I've been in, there's lower down in the earlier years, possibly there's definitely more of it. I think in the Key Stage 2 classrooms I've been in, sadly for me, it's not, doesn't seem to be as there. Probably space issues. I think somebody's picked up on that. And again, within there, but it's certainly not as widespread as it was, I don't think.
No, I've just been working in a school where
Yeah.
We've been working on that. We're working on the reading for pleasure aspect and all the different, the vending machines with the books
Yeah.
in, the reading challenges, investing in lots of new interesting books always on displays in the corridor, so that children walk past and say, I want to read that book. It may not be at their reading level, but they can certainly, look at it. We have bookcases all over school.
I think this group are fantastic at chat, aren't they? I tell you, they're one of the best I've had. Responding. Well done, everybody. Lots of comments.
And I've got lots of comments about I've been reading a book to the whole class at the end of the day. Music to my ears, that is. Fiction and non-fiction, comedy scripts, reading corners, certain lessons. If children have finished the activities early, they're allowed to pick a book to read for the remainder of the lesson. And it's always nice to see, we use reading as a reward, to go and sit in the book corner, sit on the comfy cushion, read with a friend. But, the schools that build it into the curriculum, into the timetable of, this is your reading for pleasure time, is really nice to see. Class,
I think, I don't know if you're a fan of, like me, Pam, but I'm a great fan of Mary Myatt and her big approach to reading and high quality text and reading to children.
Yeah.
The chance is squeezed out, and it shouldn't be.
I know it becomes reading to children has become an add-on. We'll fit it in, and the school I've been working in, we've made sure that it's timetabled in. Otherwise, it doesn't happen. It only happens in a few spare moments, which are getting shorter and shorter, those spare moments. But certainly, as a child, the teachers that I remember are the teachers, and I remember the books they read to us, and it really impacted on me as an individual. And I think that when I was a teacher, to take that experience into the classroom and expose them to as many books, and because it's the only way they're going to get their language models for writing as well.
Absolutely.
We could do a whole, couldn't we, again?
It's being excited over high quality texts, reading, stories, and it's such an inclusive activity. for so many. Well, it is, I would say. All the research, seems to support that, and it is unfortunately something that it does tend to get squeezed out. But we have 5 a day, 5 books a day, 5 stories a day. I don't know. There's loads of ways of
Loads of
doing it,
different
but
ways, yeah.
it just builds those that schemata in
language,
children's
the
brains, that
vocabulary.
cognition, everything.
Yeah.
So, and it's dead easy to do.
So,
And fun.
next slide. Thank you for all those
Sorry.
comments and your
Sorry. I was getting
contribution.
carried away on
Um,
reading them.
No,
Pam, apologies. Anyway,
we've got, you've got a passion there, Lee, and I share that passion for reading. Now, looking at this slide, this is 2020, so obviously, it's very out of date. So, thinking about whether this, you go back to
sorry, I clicked the wrong one.
It's all right. It's all right. That thinking about how things may have changed since 2020. 80% of teachers believe that more could be done, particularly in these particular areas. Looking at the research there, and it seems as though these are the top 7 that teachers thought at that time could be more thoughtfully included in the environment, the resources to reflect these groups. What do you think now? I mean, we've got a captured audience. Do you think that, especially in the schools you're in, or more widely, do you think that now it may be some of those percentages have changed? Just put something in the chat. What do you think? The top 7 groups that could be more thoughtfully included, and it was, SEND or additional needs was really the top. Nearly half at LGBT.
I think there's, and again, I hope I'm being corrected here by those that are on there. I felt there was there wasn't lots of high quality books that sort of talked about SEN or additional needs in a really thoughtful and sort of empowering way. As much some of the other areas, I thought, yes, there's some really high quality material out there, but I think often in my experience, that was something that was missing. I don't know if that things have changed. I must be honest, I'm not on the ball with the latest bits of children's literature, and I will be after this one. I'm going to go and have a look and see what they're saying. But
I think from what I've seen, there's a lot of a lot more reflection of different cultures and backgrounds. There's a lot more. I think schools, the movement that came after COVID, that I know lots of schools bought lots of resources and lots of books and really looked into that and tried to move away from the tokenistic kind of approach with it and really embedding it into their curriculums. Just seeing in the chat there that's a really good point, I think, Becky, a really good point about the nuclear family, 2.2 children, 2 parents. We have lots of blended families. We have families that look very different these days. And, is that reflected always? Certainly in, that's a category that's not even addressed, but certainly one that it clearly needs addressing.
I think it's always a really useful activity, Pam, isn't it? Just to look at the books assigned to your class, your year group, your school, and just to read, without going into too much detail, actually have a look at what message is it delivering? Are they delivering? Because there's a lot of older texts which might be considered really classics by many, but the messages that are in there could possibly at odds with certain things. There's lots of really new texts, some of the reading schemes, the things that go with them, what things are reflected. And it is I always find it really useful when you sit there. If they can get a librarian in that know it like the back of their hand, it's fascinating when you audit stuff and just say, oh gosh, we are
my problem is always I
promoting that.
I think my problem as a head was I didn't have enough money to go and buy all the books that I wanted to.
Exactly.
See these wonderful books and think, they will really reflect the children in my school. We had 29 different languages spoken in my school, and
amazing.
There was no way could we have enough resources to reflect everybody and everything. So that's interesting. So do you think that that things have moved on, everybody? Do you think that things have moved on with these percentages, or would you say that they're still, still pretty much the same, that these groups are largely unrepresented? And if you don't know, it's something to consider, certainly going forward. Next slide, please. Okay, just some comments here from children's perspective. Yeah, and I think, if they're learning about the Abyssinian crisis, was that more luck than judgment in terms of shaping the curriculum? And the curriculum's going to change, as we go through the next couple of years, but certainly in the existing curriculum, the recommendations are to adapt your curriculum to suit the context of your community. So if you're teaching about history, for instance, then you are looking at the core sort of British history, but you're also looking at how that might how the history of your community might interweave throughout that as well. So, and that's down to, that's not down to you in terms of how you plan your individual lessons. That's curriculum design that is, a school, a strategic decision from the school. Next slide. Okay. Yeah, and it's going back to what you said, Becky, as well, about not just thinking about representation of cultural differences and different races and SEND needs, but also looking at do our resources reflect those other groups? So some of our looked after children, our young carers, and children who have experienced trauma. How are these, and where do you get the balance? You've got to be so careful in some of these representations that they don't become stereotypical also, because not every child, certainly have seen things in the past where, and it's the whole term of disadvantage sometimes as well, that we're already labeling children as having a disadvantage by labeling them as disadvantaged. It's very careful approach to how we represent some of our groups of children to make them feel included, keeping with that inclusion thing. By the very act of trying to include them and represent them, we are in danger of excluding them by segregating into different groups. So it's a very fine juggling act as leaders of schools to try and do that. I did go into a classroom once, anecdotal, sorry, but I did go into a classroom once where the teacher had grouped, had actually grouped. She said, "That's my disadvantaged." She'd done a seating plan for me, and she said all the children on that table are disadvantaged. I just couldn't believe it, but that it really happened. Okay, so are we going into our reflection activity now? I think. So next slide.
We are. Yeah. Sorry, I think it's on the bottom of this one. The next one.
Oh, right. So
that's
what I want you to do is go to that page. I think it's page 13 in your resource pack. And it's talking about maths talk. Let me just see if I can share. I think I've maybe, can I share my screen, Lee?
Yeah, you can. It'll take over this one. It should do, hopefully. I can stop the share if you want to share, Pam.
It's okay. I'll just see if it comes up. I'm not sure if it'll. I'm trying to get your resource pack up so that I can show you what I mean, but bear with me. Yeah, I think I've got it. That's the one. So it's this. So can everybody see my screen? Okay, so this is your task. It goes straight into talking about whether or not your classroom that you're working in at the moment is an effective mathematics-rich learning environment that promotes maths talk. So it's asking you to very quickly, look at those questions, and just a quick sort of instinctive response to that about what your expectations are, you know, how you're modeling, because all of this is inclusive behavior. How you encourage children to use the correct mathematical language. Do you use questions? Do you do modeling by thinking out loud, your own thinking about mathematical ideas? Do you allow children time? Do you ask questions and then quickly expect an immediate answer? Do you allow them to reflect? Do you provide discussion opportunities? Do they work individually? Do they work in small groups? Do you do a mix? And are you flexible in your grouping? And all the rest of the questions there. So I'd like you to take, let's see, we've got
roughly, and well, if we say an hour, and I'll speed up after lunch. What do you think? So 30 minutes for the
right. So
30 minutes,
30 minutes to do these two tasks, and then 30 minutes for lunch. Is so about an hour. Are we saying you go straight into lunch? Yeah. So the other task. So thinking about those groups. So you've got the reflection on the maths talk, and then you've got the task 2 here, where you're going to look at listing some of those diverse groups within your school. But I would say list them within your class if you can, because you may not know your school that well, or you may. So I'm going to leave it open to how you do it. And then just sort of list the groups that you know of, and think about the groups. You know, you think about the the different SEN groups. You know, your cognitive, your communication, your sensory and physical and behaviour. Think about gender. I was talking to someone the other day that only had one girl in their class of about 15 boys and one girl, small class. Think about EAL. Think about you know, disadvantaged groups. But also don't miss out those children that are, you know, very high ability as well. So we're talking about inclusivity, and I'm not just talking about the normal range, you know, but I'm talking about those really high ability children that sometimes get missed as well. Within all of this talk, you don't see that group because it's a very small group get represented very well. So think about that, and just some brief notes on how they're represented, and if you have, you know, if you've got any thoughts about how you think they should be better represented, but it's purely a reflection activity. So that should take you up to 12 o'clock.
Well, if we say sort of 10 past, like half an hour on that, and then we'll give you your full lunch.
And come back at
well, we'll come back at 20 to 1 at 12:40.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll send you into individual rooms again, and it will automatically bring you back at that time, ready for activity 4.
You all clear about that? Okay, brilliant.
Awesome. And welcome back for this sort of activity 4 section. Again, we'll be together as a group for this one. Marmite, that's got a split opinion. Did you see what I did there? That was a bit of a joke. Anyway, I tried.
You tried, Lee. You tried.
I did. There's a tumbleweed rolling past the screen. There we go. Well, Stend isn't a Marmite option. You know, I think we're all on it. But we're going to very quickly whiz through the graduated approach. And as Pam mentioned before the dinner, sort of we do touch on Send in this, but obviously it's such a huge area that will be developed throughout your training and placements in school and subsequent courses. But we hope that this little section gives you an idea that already builds on your existing knowledge. So we're going to talk a little bit about the code of practice and the graduated response. So when we think about Send, here is the definition of that from that code of practice that was written in 2014 and that we are still using now. So a child or young person has Send if they have a learning difficulty or disability which calls for special educational provision to be made for him or her. A child of compulsory school age or young person has a learning difficulty or disability if she has significantly greater difficulty in learning than the majority of others of the same age, or has a disability which prevents or hinders him or her from making use of facilities of a kind generally provided for others of the same age in mainstream schools or mainstream post-16 institutions. It's important to note that many children and young people who have SEND may also have a disability covered by the Equality Act in 2010. That is a physical or mental impairment which has long-term or substantial adverse effects on their ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. So when you're referring to SEND, there is the definition straight from the Code of Practice that we as a school are legally obliged to follow. Within that Code of Practice is something that you may well have heard about, or you may not have heard about, which is called the graduated approach. And when we go through this, you'll see lots of similarities with, good teaching practice approaches to teaching and learning generally. But it is something that underpins all plans, all things to do with SEND, and certainly has to be followed in that area. And if those of you that have worked with SENCOs or have experience with that, I'm sure would have come across this. So the graduated approach is this, and it's basically a 4-part cycle. Okay, and you complete one cycle, then you do the next part of the cycle, as a cycle is, you go round, and then obviously you start again. And the 4 parts of those cycles are, as it says on there, which is assess, plan, do, and review. So that very closely ties up with a lot of the teaching approaches that you'll be delivering within school as well. So it's all about, trying to get to know your pupils, understand what they can do, plan to how to make that better, actually carry that out, and then review it, see where we're up to now, regain the information, and the whole cycle starts again. So when we look at a more expanded view of the graduated approach, you can see this is another representation on your screen. In the center of the screen, we've got the assess, the plan, the do, and the review. And when we think about it, it can be followed under this way. So if we start in the top right of that diagram, you can see there's a little indication that says start point. And as with all practice in schools, your start point is that high quality, inclusive teaching and whole school systems for planning, implementing and reviewing progress. Now that's the base point that should be happening in all schools. And again, there's core offers that everybody needs to have within place within schools before jumping on to the assess, plan, do, review cycle. If you've got all of that high quality inclusive teaching and the systems in place and an individual is not making progress, we then enter the plan, do, review cycle, the graduated approach cycle. So in the assess phase, you draw on the information, key points, you get information from the child, the parent, external services, and you assess them against the SEN criteria. Okay, together, the teacher, the SENCO, the child agree those interventions, the support that would be effective, and what the expected outcomes are. And these are recorded on the systems that you have within school, and all staff that are informed of what's going on. Again, please note, as we'll get through, child voice, parent voice is hugely central in this core construction of these plans. Obviously, that input varies greatly when we consider the age of the child and how much they are able to contribute to it. But in principle, it's the child voice, the parent voice, the teacher, and the other experts' voices around there. Once you've planned that intervention, you go to the do phase, which is where you implement the plan. Okay, the class teacher is responsible. Okay, so even though this plan may have been written up as a co-constructed effort, as it should be, with the SENCO and the parent and the child, ultimately the class teacher remains responsible for working and delivering that plan on a daily basis and, crucially, assessing the impact of the plan. So after the set points within your planning phase, you would have identified a review point, X number of weeks here, or whatever's appropriate to the child's needs. And then you come to that review, and this is where you have that impact assessment. So you along again, getting the views of the parent and the child, you review the overall impact of the plan that you've put in place. What difference has it made? Okay, and again, from that, you might find out that actually that's been perfect, and that progress has been made in all of those areas, and actually the child doesn't need any additional provision, any additional plans in place in order to access the learning that's in front of them. So they would come off this cycle, and then it goes back to the fantastic high quality inclusive teaching. If the expected progress isn't being made, you then review, okay, what went well, what didn't go well. We collect all the information from all the different stakeholders, and the process starts again. Okay, and then we go all the way around. And the aim of this is that ideally, because of the interventions and the implementation of what you've put in place, the child doesn't need that additional support. They're able to access things with all the things that are in place. So that's a sort of an expanded version of the plan, do, review. I think the next slide really sums it up very, very simply. And we've had this on the chat that we've had earlier in the day. You know, when we think about inclusion, when we think about SEND, it's simply put, it's the right support in the right place at the right time. And that phrase comes from a government review in 2022. And it kind of, you know, the review identified that often there was inconsistency in how needs are being met. Okay, and decisions are too often made based on where a child or a person lives, how is educated, and not necessarily on their needs. Okay, and that was found to start in early years at mainstream schools, where despite the best endeavours, schools were often ill-equipped to identify and support the children. And the inconsistent practice doesn't help anybody. It actually makes things worse as we go through. It was not clear on that review that families knew what they should expect from the schools. And because of that, they kind of lost confidence in the settings that they can meet their needs. And as a result from that, lots of people kind of jumped and went out to try and make sure the support is there in a legally binding way, which is by gaining an EHCP. And the hope of kind of the sort of the profession, the government, is that actually with the right support at the right time, at the right place, everybody sees that progress. So the number of people applying for EHCPs is less, which means the system is better equipped to be able to cope with the numbers that they are. Once an EHCP is granted, when that plan do review cycle has been carried out a number of times, at least 3 times, with evidence and impact reports and things like that, before you can even get on the application process in order to get that legally binding education, health and care plan. So again, you know, because so many people feel that the child's maybe not getting the support that they need in the most way possible, that has led to that increase of requests for EHCPs, and consequently the big delays and, you know, people not getting what's going on, statutory deadlines falling by, and the all sorts of situation that we're in currently, which is, as we spoke about earlier this morning, you know, a real challenge for schools and for the government and for families going forward. So, you know, ultimately, you know, we're all trying to get that we need a much greater consistency in schools right from the off about how needs are identified and supported, so that the right support in the right place at the right time can happen. Okay, done very transparently with the families and the children. Okay, and decisions aren't being made outside of that. By keeping everybody involved, hopefully everybody makes progress, and then the system thrives because of it as we go through. When we think about the SEN Code of Practice, again, where pupils are. And again, this is this importance of transparency. Where a pupil is receiving SEND support, schools should talk to parents regularly to set the clear outcomes and review progress towards them. The activities are discussed and the support that will help their child achieve, and identifying the responsibilities of the parent, the pupil and the schools. And in these cycles, it's expected that schools meet parents at least 3 times a year to discuss the plans and the support of what's in place within there. So what's come through that there, and again, Pam, please jump in, is that importance of that co-creation, that actually not thinking you know what a child needs because of where they come from, where they live, what background they have, actually getting the evidence underneath it to be able to put the best support in place.
Yep, Leo, I agree with all of that. And I think, you know, some of the things that the logistics can get in the way sometimes when you can't get hold of parents or parents don't engage. But the research shows that when the parents are engaged in and partners in their children's support and their learning, that it's because you are partners, because the parents and the school both want the same thing. But it's the journey how to get there which often causes the problem. So just to bear that in mind.
Absolutely does. And again, it's that kind of, sometimes they only feel the only way is to go down the legal route, which puts on, again, a huge drain on sort of resources and time to actually get all the paperwork together for the HCPs and things like that, so I suppose the hope is that if we get it right early on, involving the families, the parents, the children, then everything goes along sort of well without the extra requirements that come with education, health and care plans. Before we move on to Pam talking about some common SEN needs, are there any reflections, any comments that anybody would like to make on the sort of code of practice, on that idea, that very brief introduction of what SEN is and how it's approached within schools, the graduated approach, the plan, do, review cycle? Is anybody involved with any of that? Carrying out a plan that may already be in place in your schools? I see some heads going down. Maybe that means they're typing. Oh, sorry. Hi, Owen, you've got your hand up. Thank you.
Yeah, just a quick question. Are the is it monitored in terms of percentages? So if a pupil's put on, is identified and goes through the whole process, and then we go to review, is it an ongoing thing, or are schools kind of measured on how effective it has been?
I think again, whenever from that kind of overview, data is always used. Whether it's used effectively and in the right ways is another question. But certainly, say for when we think about an Ofsted inspection, they would first and foremost come in and they would cover, what are your numbers, and like what we had on that chat earlier on. If you've got huge percentages of SEN, but in a particular area, they will ask to say, well, why? Is the teaching and learning in that area up to scratch? If all your issues are speech and language, say for instance, it's like, well, what's the provision for that? So the leadership team will have that in their bag. They'll know the reasons for it. Likewise, because if you're massively awry of the national averages, questions will always be asked. And it's not that it's not wrong, it's just that awareness. In terms of doing a good job, what's important is that progress is being made by the children. That isn't always, with SEN in particular, isn't always a number. You know what I mean? If again, the feedback will come from various things, from observations, from feedback from families, from feedback from children, and obviously, that sort of qualitative. I can't even say that. Is that right? Qualitative, as well as quantitative. So around as well as numbers.
Okay, Megan's asked a question.
Sorry.
Yeah. If a teacher suspects a child has SEN, but the parent will not get a diagnosis, what are the next steps for that? Well, unfortunately, you can, you do need the parents' cooperation with that. To have observations and from externals and all sorts of things. So it does help. But the point with this is a diagnosis alone does not make it better. So, often parents think, or, if we get a label for this, oh, we know what the matter is and everything will be okay. But you would expect schools and teachers and provision to be meeting that child's needs, whether they've got a diagnosis or not. So yes, it's helpful because you can get additional funding, all sorts of support that you might not get without the diagnosis. But you would be expected to be putting in that sort of provision anyway. We don't wait until we get a diagnosis to be able to do particular things in terms of meeting their needs. So, and I always used to explain this to parents who were really pushing for a diagnosis because they thought if their child was labelled with X, Y, or Z, then immediately things would be better. But what I used to try and explain, we're already doing all the things that they would have if they had the diagnosis or not. But yeah, that can be a point of contention and a difficulty. When an external professional's visit to observe a child are involved in sharing evidence after assessing, also again updating new changes.
Thank you, Shamila.
Same situation as in my class, parents refuse to get it diagnosed, and that stands for what I just said.
I think it's absolutely, in many ways, if we're not on that that route of EHCPs, it is better for everybody around, because often schools are doing an awful lot to try and meet those needs, and just having a label, as Pam said, doesn't necessarily guarantee that something's going to change overnight. You've got the same provision, the same staff, the same this, that, and the other. So again, there's a communication issue around there. One thing that's useful, which Pam had done there, is before we even get to identifying SEN and doing that, there's this, I think it's commonly known as ordinary available practice or ordinary available provision. All LAs will have a list of everything that should be happening in class before we even get on to like the SEN plan do review cycle. I think it's called OAPs, aren't they? Ordinary available provision. So they're a big, depending on the authority that you're in, some of them are absolutely huge, but it's all of the strategies that should be in place, all of these on, and often that again is to try and make schools be aware of, well, actually, are we doing these things? In most cases, schools are, and it's not a problem, but in some cases, schools aren't. So it's worth having a look in your authority, look for that OAP, ordinarily available provision, what should be going on day to day, what's expected in your area, and then that's a useful starting point as well.
Saffron said having a diagnosis is really validating. It offers them more protections, especially later in life. I totally agree with that. If there is a particular need there, and to have a diagnosis of it, of course, is beneficial. My point is that you shouldn't wait for a diagnosis as a school or a teacher to put the support in place anyway. Megan said, then this is a difficult one, Megan, because should a teacher tell the students' parents if they suspect it, or could that be inappropriate? It could be inappropriate, and I would go to your head teacher and let your head teacher make that decision, because it will be contextual. You've got to look at the whole context of it, the family, the parent, the child, and not make any assumptions. So it's a very, very delicate thing to, you can imagine what could be the connotations of that. So always go to your head teacher, SENCO, and have that discussion, because it's not really up to you as a teacher to say, I think your child has this.
Absolutely,
it's very difficult.
I think quite often for many of the diagnoses, obviously they're a medical diagnosis, not an educational standpoint. So obviously, that involves lots of other outside agencies. As a teacher, we can't say that a child is X, Y, or Z. We can share their successes and the challenges, which maybe help guide people to get those validating diagnoses that's right for the child. So thank you very much for each of those. And it's really interesting now, because we're moving on to Pam to actually, we've talked a lot about SEN, but a bit of specifics around what are the common needs in schools, again, data driven. So I'll hand over to you, Pam.
Okay, so here we've got a task for you to do independently. after we look at these slides, you have to look at page 17 on your facilitator resource pack, and there is a link to some videos. Now you have to register first. It doesn't take a minute. You register first, and then you select, I think it's one of 12 videos that expands on each of the needs that we're going, well, most of the needs we're going to look at briefly. And then when you've looked at that, when you've watched the video of your choice, we won't direct you to watch one, but watch one that you don't know anything about. That's what I would advise you to do, that's not familiar to you. And then we'll come back and we'll just share some key points of things that you've watched. So next slide just talks about those 4 categories of need, and anyone that's been, working in this sort of arena will be aware of those 4 categories. The thing is with this, does anybody know a child that fits neatly into those categories and nothing else, or do you see overlaps? Have a look at that slide for a minute and think about the children you've encountered, and think about we've gone into a different mode there. Okay. And think about whether the child that you're thinking about, do they fit neatly into there? Are their behaviors mostly best fit, but do we see other aspects? Have a quick look at the slide and then put something in the chat, or put your hand up. Take some feedback on that. Which ones quite often go together? Theodora?
Theodora?
Hi there. I thought it would be much easier to just speak my mind.
Yeah.
So I have a little girl in my class. She has communication and communication and language speech delay. And she is also struggling with cognition and learning. So you could see how there's the fact that she's struggling to communicate and it is leading into like the fact that there's a lack of cognition there. I can see how it's interlinked.
Yeah, and you can see how difficult diagnosis actually is when you have all of these different overlapping areas. Anybody else to chip in there?
It's interesting. Samira on the chat has just said that obviously huge overlaps with the behavioural and the emotional, with the cognition and learning. So again, when needs are met, often those earlier things, emotional and behavioural needs, are sometimes those are reduced slightly. So again, that's a useful comment. Thank you, Samira.
Do you see the links between the communication and the communication needs and maybe the social and emotional needs as well? Do you see any evidence of that in your experience, or any children that you've got in your classes?
Yes, I have a child with autism, ASD. So she's nonverbal and she's having communication and interaction difficulties. At the same time, she is overlapping with unable to read or write, like dyslexia, and ASD, like behavioral issues. So the most of the time, the child with the one statement, they have overlapping with other things as well. So adaptive learning environment is mostly for those children's needs are adjusted.
Thank you, Shamila. And I think, the important point to make here is that every single child is unique, and that they don't fit neatly into these circles, these boxes, and their actual need will manifest itself in so many different ways that is, unique to that child. And so, that point of, that Lee was making about, the planning, the assess stage is so important in order to get to know that child and their needs absolutely thoroughly before anything is jumped upon to say this child is this and this child is that, and because each child, and you will see that as you go through your careers, and you will meet children that are categorized into some of these areas for their EHCPs, but they will manifest themselves in such different ways. So it's very, very easy to say, oh, this child has this, but looking at what else might be happening there with that particular child. Have you put anything? Has anybody put anything in the chat?
We've got obviously the kind of certain conditions, sort of, are sort of can be driven by other ones. So Sophie's mentioned anxiety, making a selective mutism issue, much more impactful there. We've got SEMH needs and ASD and anxiety, the comorbidities. That's a very key word at the moment. Things don't exist in isolation, particularly. And again, depending on the approaches that are taken, can drive, certain things to the fore a little bit more. But that idea of comorbidity, it's not a one shot. And I think that's why these joined circles are quite useful, really.
Absolutely.
As it goes through, particularly.
Are
Thank
there
you for that,
any
Sarah.
other, sorry, Lee, are there any other factors that could impact on all of this? So, yes, we've got these areas, but are there other factors and variables that could impact on a child's needs being more visible or less visible, or more vulnerable? Anyone think of anything that could impact on these? Home environment. Thank you, Samira. Okay, do you want to expand on that, Samira? Gender, masking, higher ability children take longer to be diagnosed. Some good points being made here.
Yeah, so home environment, so if the child's home environment is not stable, or if they have problems at home, it might make it more difficult for them in school with their learning, if like their basic needs are not being met, so they can't reach their learning needs.
Yeah, so sometimes these things are very layered, where you will see that there will be complications, maybe home environment, maybe to do with gender, maybe to do with other variables that are beyond the school's control, that could be impacting on a condition that is already there. Not causing the condition, obviously, but impacting on that condition. So it's getting to know the child and being very aware of what's going on in that child's life. And that's why often schools have a very joined up approach between safeguarding, child protection, vulnerable children, and looking at special needs, to make sure that those layers are uncovered so that they can get the best possible support. It's a multi-layered and very complex area.
I think there's some really good ones. Obviously, the trauma informed and that awareness of sort of adverse childhood experiences, and that trauma informed approach certainly is welcome. It's nice to see that mentioned on there. I think the difference in quite often. Oh, sorry, my screen's playing up. I do apologise. It keeps dropping out. There we go. We're back on. That idea of Saffron makes a really good point. Sometimes the children that appear to be achieving well within school may be easily missed and not get any adjustments made appropriately, or diagnoses down the line. I think that is very, very true. Not so much anymore. So much, I think teachers are much more aware at realising that kind of, you don't have to be sort of very obvious to have a special educational need. It's about looking beyond that. Going years ago, very much a case of, wrongly, well, they're not causing any trouble in class, so everything's okay. Which we know isn't the case now when we look at things with a different lens. But again, it's about getting the right adjustments, the right support, the right time, the right place. So some really insightful comments. Again, I've been super impressed with the the depth and sort of you know, the way people are thinking on this course. And in the 2 sessions that we've had, Pam, I don't know about you, that
Yeah,
consistency.
absolutely.
Yeah,
It
super.
certainly makes for a more interactive session. You go to the
does.
next slide and we'll just have a
Of course
look
I
at some
can.
of those.
Yeah.
Just have a look at those, you know, very, very briefly. So the videos that you're going to look at will cover some of these, and that's just giving you, you know, an overview of some of the specific learning difficulties. But, you know, as we've just discussed, and I expect that this graphic is trying to represent that, you know, in overlapping, but you could overlap it in so many different ways, which is why, again, you know, diagnosis is so different, so difficult. You know, if you've got something that's very, very easy, you know, like a child can't see properly or a child can't hear properly, and you know, that's very, very easy. But some of the more complex areas are very difficult to do. So most of those you'll be familiar with there, and it's nice to see that the gifted, and someone's mentioned that in the chat, you know, that the gifted child there is also considered a specific learning difficulty for obvious reasons. And also to see depression in there. So looking at mental health, which, you know, is a very real thing. So it's nice to see that. And you don't often think of children being depressed, but they, you know, it certainly is quite widespread. So if you now go
I think,
to,
oh, sorry, I was going
Lee,
to say,
no,
Pam,
chip
as
in,
well.
please.
Yeah, no, I think again, it's obviously like we had earlier on, you know, the mental changes, people, you know, we'll have conditions grouped in different ways, you know, names change. And again, it's always being aware of kind of what those changes are. And again, just, you know, engaging with up-to-date information, as we've always said, is how you're in the best place to move on. Yeah.
Because some of these are quite new, aren't they? Well, newish, but new to schools, I suppose, when you look at something like ODD, you know, the oppositional defiance disorder. And I think that, you know, the probably more will come out as well. Sarah, family, one new one. Some interesting research. How many children were targeted, gifted, and talented? That, yes, absolutely.
I think absolutely. I think that you know, that neural diversity and being, you know, sort of you know, a neuropositive, neuro aware, you know what I mean, is kind of certainly something. And it to be honest, it makes it for me as a neurotypical person a bit easier, you know, to be able to sort of, you know, try to understand that actually such a range, so many different things come into there, and, you know, being able to build on the strengths of everybody is something that I personally really welcome. But thank you for that, Saffron.
You know, there is an argument that there's nobody is neurotypical, you know, that
absolutely,
we're all very unique, and and especially now it's more aware out there in the public arena that people are now sort of identifying themselves with, you know, neurodivergent behaviors that they hadn't thought of before. But then you think, well, that's just, and it is just part of you as well, isn't it? And there's some really interesting observations from everybody there, you know, that thinking about the constant change of teachers and TAs, you know, lack of consistency, breakdown of relationships can all add to an overlap for these difficulties. And
absolutely, I think that's a really good point, actually. You know, I think that idea of, you know, what is neurotypical, I think that's you know, that in itself is a huge, we could probably spend a whole day
have
discussing.
Another day on that.
Yeah, because I think you know, to understand oneself is to understand other people, I think so.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a fascinating area. Thank you for so many insightful comments.
So if you go now to you'll go into you're being sent to your rooms again. You will go to some independent learning time where you'll register for those videos. You will watch the videos. There is a template in that resource pack for you just to make some notes. They call it a case study, but just to make some notes against what you've seen, and then we can feed back. So try and watch one that is unfamiliar to you, and then we'll take some brief feedback when we come back. So what should we say? 30 minutes for that, Lee?
It says 25. I'm just conscious of trying to get through the other things on there. Yeah, well, if we go for 25, because we'll come back and we'll have 5 minutes to discover.
I've got 40 minutes, so I was trying to cut it down.
Ah, right. Have you? All right. Okay. Right. Sorry. I'm looking at the wrong slide. 40 minutes. Well, yeah, 30 minutes. Good thinking. We'll go for that.
Okay, lovely.
Okay. Right. I've got to try and make it work now, though, which is the. There we are. So there's those areas, and they've got the links in the thing. I'll copy the website link as well and pop that into the chat, hopefully, in case you haven't got it to hand, if it works. There we go. Right, so I'm going to open the rooms now, and we'll see you coming back here in around 30 minutes for us summing up. Thank you. There we go. That's working. Kelsey, is everything okay? Saffron, Theodore, is everything okay? Have you not been given a room?
No, I haven't.
Oh gosh, sorry about that. How bad am I? I do apologise. There we go. I've just done that one there. And hopefully that should be fine. I think. Everybody's.
Just Kelsey.
Kelsey, we're still not. Hi, Kelsey. I'm just trying to see where you are. Been assigned to a room. Are you there, Kelsey?
Have I got, I don't know. I've got room 28, 2 people in it.
Have you? Oh gosh, okay. I'll move
Yeah,
one.
I think I've got
sorry.
Paul and Theodora in a room together.
Right. I'll move to 27, Paul. There we go. Right, there we are. We're done. I think it's really hard to keep track, but I think we appear to drop people off as the day goes on.
Oh, and you know what it is?
By
2
one or
people,
two.
Somebody's gone on a school run and somebody's
right,
laptop
okay.
is playing up. So our numbers have changed. Right, okay. Right.
Okay.
So what have they got? 30 minutes. So
yeah,
we'll
so
come
we've
back
got
in
that
30 and do 6.
and then yeah, we've got that one there, and then I'll do the next section kind of all together rather than send them off again. We'll do it as a group on there. It's such a big area though, isn't it? And
it's massive, and it can become
huge.
it's too intense to do it in such a a condensed amount of time. It's really
and
hard.
It's so sort of personal as well. And so because when you think kind of systematically and big picture, it's kind of it's about what can we do at scale that's the best for everybody.
I know.
And because I think we'd all love to be able to be individual and have everything, but it's just not geared up for it.
And also,
that's
I
what's
think
so frustrating.
Some of these are parents of children and I can feel that coming through.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. Oh, hi,
Theodora,
Theodora. Is everything okay?
Yes, just the person in the same room with me left, so it was by myself.
Oh yeah, no, I think you're supposed to be by yourself. I moved them on. It's because you've just got time to watch one of those videos on one of the areas of need, as Pam said. Make a few notes, then we're coming back. Okay. Oh, do I need to add you? Or
I think so. Sorry about that.
Hey, no, it's okay. I'm learning all the time. Let's have a look. Where are you? How are you finding today, Theodora?
Yes, very informative. I have a passion for it. Yeah.
Well, there's such a it's so it is a massively interesting area. I wish we could give more time to it, really. Where are we? Right, moving to. I'm trying to find an empty room for you. Right, 21's empty. There we go. Move to 21.
Thank you.
Hopefully she'll be there. See you soon.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm learning about breakout rooms, so that's really
Well,
good.
yeah, I mean, I think it seems to be going fairly smoothly. I think
It is,
ish.
it
We've had a
is, it is.
few. I
Yeah.
hope I haven't
No, it's been fine, and I think that
put a thing on it.
they're all very good as well, aren't they? They're all very
They
they
seem to be,
know
yeah.
about these
They
things,
seem
and
very
they're very
sort of on
involved.
it. Yeah,
So that's good. Right,
yeah.
I'm going to go and get a cup of tea, and I shall
That's
see you
it.
in 25 minutes or so.
Oh gosh, that's it. Well, 25 minutes and 19 seconds, Pam. There we go. Just
Okay.
in case. There we are. I'll
Thanks,
see you
Ben.
then. See you in a bit.
Brilliant. Thank you, James.
Oh.
So,
Hi, Sophie. Oh,
sorry, yeah, Sophie, you've got some feedback for us?
Oh, yeah. I watched the autism one. And it says at one point about like you as a teacher being the most motivational thing in the room, about like a visually clear environment. And that's just stood out loads to me in the sense of I know to keep the environment clear and not overstimulate, but they talked about a technique called attention autism, where
attention autism.
where you just build up their attention starting from such a small thing, like they were saying, like a fluffy toy, and then that can lead to an activity, just building up their attention span. I just thought that's really, I just think that's quite meaningful. That stuck with me.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you for that. I'm glad you got something out of that. Anybody else? Owen, I'm going to pick on Owen.
I did
James,
I
yeah.
did can't even pronounce it, dyscalculia.
Dyscalculia.
That's
Dyscalculia.
it.
Yeah, dyscalculia. Yeah.
Sorry, yeah. And yeah, it was a new word to me. I think one thing that really stood out was that it shouldn't be framed as a difficulty to the child. Within the classroom that they filmed, there were sort of specific posters that made sure the whole classroom understood that. So even though the child will be doing separate, sort of maybe separate lessons or parts of lessons on a laptop because it was going to help them, it was basically making sure that that child never feels that they're different because they have this issue that's being addressed with the school and the wider school, and the importance of teaching assistants as well was the person involved had weekly updates with the teaching assistant about the child that was in this specific video.
Some really good points there, and interestingly, because it's something you'd not come across, but are bound to come across in your career. So some good points, Elizabeth. I watched the one on ADHD. I think it's, sorry, let me go into the chat again. I've lost it.
Yeah.
Let me see.
I think Becky and Elizabeth both watched the ADHD one.
Raise awareness. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a good point, isn't it? You know, to raise with the whole school, to raise awareness. And I think somebody else made this point earlier on, that girls get missed out on a diagnosis due to their main impairment being inattention as opposed to hyperactivity, and that's a really good point as well, because there is an underdiagnosis with girls there, and some interesting strategies they use for each specific student with the ADHD. Thank you. Who else have we got there?
We've got the hearing impairment. Again from Rachel, he talked about regulating noise levels, using sort of lights within the classroom to let people know that's supporting that. Thank you, Rachel.
I think Samira's, observation about working with the child's family to see what adaptations will suit them best with speech and language delay. And I think that's going back to the point where each of the children are unique, even though there may be a delay, the variables around it are many. So working with the family to get really good, background information.
I think that's a really good point in all of those, and obviously came back in earlier on that properly finding out, from pupil voice, from parents' impact, to actually really understand, how you can support in the best way possible. I think that's come through lots of these things, Pam.
Yeah. And that's interesting, isn't it? From Josh, regulating light in the classroom, overstimulation for autism is something. And, going back to what we said about the physical environment, and some of the schools where, they are in a state of disrepair, where the blinds don't work. You've got sunlight coming in all the time, sunlight on the board. There's not enough money to get things repaired. So all of these are, really interesting and, real problems. Task break can be really helpful, breaking up the learning into small chunks. So some really good observations there. So it looks as though you really got something out of that. And of course, you can go and watch the rest of the videos in your own time, so you can get a good sort of all-round. I mean, it only touches on it, but you can get a good all-round overview of some of these areas, and some that you may not have considered before. So that takes us nicely into activity 6, I think, Lee, does it?
It does. Over to me. There we go. Thank you, Pam. So yeah, we're coming up now to the last sort of learning activity, really. Following this, we've got sort of evaluations and some reflections and things to do. We're going to sort of stay together as a group. We're going to have another little go on the whiteboard in a moment, and then we'll watch some videos and get some feedback as we go through. So in a moment, I'm going to sort of I'm going to share a whiteboard on there. And again, what I want you to think about is, ways that SEND could be identified in your classroom. So how are you going to identify particular, that SEND may be a concern there? What approaches are there? And just have a think again, there's no wrong or right answers, just what things could you do to maybe try and, think, there could be a SEND issue there. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen, he hopes. Let's have a look. Okay, so you should just see me, I think, or Pam, is that right? And then I'm going to add a whiteboard, he says. A new whiteboard, there it goes. It's on. So again, if you sort of, you can pull out the text boxes on there, drag them across, add in your little sections, type in, and then we can have a look as to where we're going. So observations is in there. We've got numerous ways of adding text on through text boxes, through stickies. So how could you identify SEND in the classroom? Observations gathering the child. Looking at children's self-regulation techniques. Formative and summative assessments. Fantastic. So looking at those areas. Makaton. Discussions with parents. Observing patterns over time. Forgetting instructions, not being able to follow a sequence of instructions, what you may expect. Students' behaviours. Unengaged, even quieter. Exploring, getting an understanding of where children go and how they interact within the room. Are they seeking out quiet spaces or other things? Working with therapists, discussion with SENCO parents. If children are withdrawn particularly, not engaging, irresponsive. Getting to know your children, do they tell you what they're struggling with? Documenting those conversations. Repeated absence, that's an interesting one. Are people opting out of school? Is there a potential reason there? Again, so I'm going to move across. I'll try to keep zooming in all these different areas.
I think the attendance one is a really important one.
That's an interesting one, yeah.
It is an interesting one because, it's interesting that Ofsted have grouped sort of attendance with behaviour, and they're 9 times out of 10, there's a reason a child doesn't want to come to school. Linked to a need that they feel that they're not coping, they can't cope, and they can't cope in that environment. It's not just that I just won't bother to go. So I think attendance is a big indicator that needs looking into more closely.
That something's not working, isn't it? If that's the case, I think. Yeah. So some really good unengaged, even quieter child. We've got some really detailed thoughts here about things that you can do possibly to do that. Just thinking about your own practice in schools, has any have things jumped out to yourselves? Again, you can please unmute, speak to us. Have you seen some of these things? Are there things that you've maybe followed up, or in your own mind, or indeed with your mentors and class teachers? Things you've been proven right with, or worth further investigation? Things you maybe brought to people's attention that they haven't seen before. Anybody's willing to share?
Lee, I would like to say with
Oh, hi,
the
Hannah.
with the special needs children or the any other students to become a very inclusive practice is I notice is best like building a trust between each
Yeah.
other and have a really positive relationship. Once they feel safer to talk to you or share their emotions, it becomes sort of better way, like positive attitude from them, and their learning becomes a bit more easier in my expectation and in my experience, I think, but I'm not sure.
No, I think you hit upon, the first day's training was all about those really important, effective relationships. Without those in place with the children, with the families, with the staff, you're never going to be able to get that information that you need in order to make those judgments. So thank you for that. There's an interesting point there. I think this is something that I've picked up over my, constant toilet break during lessons. Again, something I always chuckle at here is that, I always used to gauge my effectiveness as a teacher. If people wanted to go to the loo, I wasn't hitting the mark. Basically, it was more interesting for them to go out to the toilet
or
than
sharpen their
than
pencil.
being there.
Or
Yeah, so little things like that, and it is true. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes in this case, in an SEN need, in that it may be again seeking that quieter space or time out space. But again, thinking of a general engagement point of view as well. Needs aren't being met if people are constantly looking to opt out.
Ruth has her hand
Oh,
up.
Ruth, sorry, hands up. Thanks, Ruth.
And Owen.
And Owen.
Watching how they interact with others as well has a big.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think it was last week, we had a child crying because they'd been bit by someone.
Uh-huh.
And after investigating it, it was because that the child that got bit was shouting in the other child's face, and they didn't know how to almost tell them that they were getting overstimulated and to step back.
Yeah.
So they just bit them because to them that was their way of saying go away.
Communication. Yeah.
That's thank you for that. So again, it's a useful thing. We observe them in the classroom settings. Do we observe them in the transition times, the social times? Do we know how people are actually in groups of people at playtimes, things like that? Because often we learn a lot there. Owen.
It was just a follow on really from the previous point when it's getting to know the specific child and learning more about them. And that some days, it's happened quite a few times, you can have 2 or 3 really good days in a row where there's a child who's maybe presenting difficulties. You have one-to-one conversations with them and you think you're making great progress. And then you can have a day where they completely have absolutely no interest in engaging with you whatsoever. So there's no it's continuous. There's no breakthrough, I've done it. You're going to have to repeat and keep that process going, I think.
But and again, that's like a mini plan, do, review you've got going on there. When we think about those, looking to get an EHCP, that graduated response, we do that almost daily with things. Thanks, Owen, for that. Really good point. Okay, so some fantastic engagement there. Thank you for sharing those ways. I'm just going to stop that whiteboard so it will disappear. And then I'm going to share my screen again, just to bring us up to, hopefully we should see that. Here, again, in addition to what you've already said, this is something that we've put together, BPN have put together there. So some possible ways to identify SEND, the ongoing observation and formative assessment by the teacher that was mentioned on there. Baseline assessment results, those early assessments. Progress against objectives in literacy, in English or maths. Performance against level descriptors could be used. Again, these were all on the whiteboard that we put together. Again, standardized screening or assessment tools can be used. Parental concerns, pupil progress meetings. So, I think you had a much richer elements of things on there as well. Have I shared the screen? Can we not see the screen?
See the screen.
Oh, sorry. Have we not? Thank you for that. Thank you, Kelsey. Sorry, there you can see those exact things that I've just talked about, everybody. So that's me trying. I've got a cognitive overload here, Pam. I'm struggling to hold many things together. But again, you know, we had a much richer answers that most of those were already on there. I mentioned earlier on about the ordinary available provision that all schools should have in there. I just googled when we were on the break earlier on, and it just so happened that I think Surrey popped up first. I don't know whether they're paying Google, but Surrey came up first when I searched out for that one. So I've just shared with you their OAP document. But again, in any of the authorities where you are, there will be one. And it's actually interesting when you look at there, it says, you know, what potential things could you be seeing? These are the things that we'll do in school to try those adjustments that we'll make. So another useful document there that adds to this one here. And by no means am I bigging up Surrey. I do love Surrey. Nothing against Surrey. Any people from Surrey here? They just happen to be number one on Google for some reason. But again, you know, it's worth having a look at. But they're all the authorities have something very, very similar. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to have a little bit of another activity now, and we've got a sort of a video to watch, and we'll watch it together, this little video. And this video is around a little child called Oliver who has Down syndrome. And in your packs, I'm not sure what page it is, plus or minus something, or else there's a little space where you can just make some observations really about what we see going on. And again, the trick about observing is exactly that. Just document what you see.
Page
you know,
16.
we can. Oh,
Page
thank you
16,
very
yeah.
much.
Oh,
Page
thank you,
16. Thank you,
Sarah.
Sarah. Yeah. So there's a space on that workbook there you can add into it. And again, you know, we're going to observe and just document what we see, what's going on. It's only after we've collected that information can we start to maybe analyze it and ask questions and things out more. So we'll watch this video together. I'm going to stop sharing this screen, and then I'm going to try and share another screen with you so we can watch the video. Do make some notes, and then we'll come back together. So I'm going to stop this screen. Should come back to me. I'm then going to share another screen, which is this one here, which hopefully you can now see. And I'm going to press play. And please do give me some thumbs up that we can hear it. So this is Oliver. Hopefully you've got some space to make some observation notes, and we'll come back together after watching this. Can we hear that okay? No?
No.
Oh, okay, let me just stop sharing that, and let me just, I thought I ticked all the boxes on it. Share. Share. Oh, sorry. Share options, share sound. There we go. Right, anyway, we should be fine now. He hopes. Let's try again. Oh, thank you.
Where are you going to play?
your shoes. Would you like to help Sue? At singing time, give the shoes out. Shall we ask?
You found some swishy noodles? Oh, they look really swishy. Good stacking, Oliver.
Okay, everybody, thank you for your attention there. Just any things that people have observed on that video? What did you notice? Again, pop some things in chat, unmute. You know, again, what's the catchphrase? What do they say? Say what you see. Say what you see. Okay, checking each object for sound. Okay, there's that repetition there.
And also he copied the girl from painting.
There was an element of that kind of sort of copying, that sort of behaviour, particularly in that second scene. Interacting with some peers and resources.
And trying to speak to the big boy when he wants to say, can we build a big tower? Then he...
Again, you know, we've got the things there, you know, from looking again, you know, chipping to whatever, you know, obviously, you know, Oliver was sort of, you know, bottom shuffling, I think, throughout it. He was able to turn and sort of pivot, kind of often, you know, move, shuffle forward with one leg out and one was bent for the majority of the interactions. We did see the time when he was on his feet, but the majority of time, Oliver was sat down. He was able to use both hands to pick up the blocks, tend to sort of, it was a kind of a gross movement to pick up with, like a whole hand, rather than kind of, you know, finer motor skills, things from what I saw. Again, there was that repetitive behaviour, shaking the sound, every block was a put down, put a block. And I think when you look at the child next to them, who was sort of constructing and building, sort of Oliver wasn't seen doing that kind of behaviour. It was very much the pick up, have a look, move within there. He was able to push and pull large things, and he was, you know, to build some simple towers and things. Building of a tower was accurate initially with the water bottles there. Drop and throw items, I think we observed these are all coming in over there. Unstructural playing. I think there was the one instance of where the kind of the mirror and the copying of the behaviour around the paint. I didn't see a great deal of peer interaction other than that particular one as it went through. It was sort of, there was no verbal interaction with any of the peers.
as we're going through. Again, he was, you know, sat very securely on the floor. You know, as it went all the way through, he didn't seek out others, but did seem to play next to, alongside them within there.
Problem solving, you know,
Problem solving,
with the bottles, stacking the bottles.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Trying to problem solve as we go through there. So there's lots of different things that we've seen within there. And when we're looking to kind of identify, you know, potential SEN and things like that, you know, we're trying to think, you know, is what's happening, you know, significantly different from that of their peers? Or, you know, is it within, you know, sort of close by, or is there a significant difference there? Are others, or other children sort of progressing at a much faster rate than what the child that we're looking at through an SEN lens? Are they progressing? You know, are they not able to close that gap kind of as quickly as you'd hope? So, you know, within there, and, you know, those kind of observations we've just done there, they're exactly sort of the starting point, that when we're having those initial meetings, you know, that's what Oliver in this case can do. You know, and then it opens up those conversations around, well, is that reflective of sort of what we would be expecting at this stage, or is there something, is there a barrier, is there something preventing you know, Oliver from progressing or working at a similar level to their peers as it goes through? So I'm just going to share the screen again before we move on, and hopefully this will work. I didn't press share last time, did I? That was why it didn't work. Here we go. Share. There we go. Fantastic. Can we see that there? So again, when we're thinking about identifying SEN, you know, these are things that we're looking for. Is progress significantly slower than that of their peers? The rate of development, rate of progress, sort of, you know, it's what used to be happening is no longer happening anymore. So they progressed at a rate and then it plateaus, it stops. That could be an indication. The gaps between the child and their peers is not closing in any way, shape or form. So observation forms the basis of those decisions, that when we have the sort of meetings and discussions around this and developing plans to meet need, you know, that forms the bedrock of it. Is there anything else from anybody before we move on? Thank you for commenting on each of those as it goes through. There's a quick slide here just in terms of EYFS, in terms of early years. And again, that's possibly slightly different than when we're considering maybe, you know, when we're looking at it through an attainment level. Again, I'll give you a chance just to read those two statements there. So I think, you know, very summarising really quickly, that early intervention, you know, being aware of emerging difficulties, responding earlier, you know, that parental involvement early on is absolutely crucial, because they, as you know, parents know children best, and having that relationship where you can, you know, really get to know everything about a child will help us better meet their needs going forward. Okay. Right, well, thank you everybody for engaging with that little section there. I'm going to move on now to our final section before the evaluations, which is quality first teaching. Pam, over to you.
Thank you, thank you. You're doing really well, everybody. You know, it's a long day and it's very intense learning like this. I've noticed a lot of you haven't got your cameras on. If there's a specific reason, then please let me know, or maybe speak to me afterwards. It just makes for a better learning experience for everybody. You can imagine sitting in a room and trying to facilitate with people with sacks over their heads. It would make it really difficult. So, you know, to have your cameras is just an online courtesy thing. Unless you have got a specific problem with it, then you can let me know that, and that's absolutely fine. So let's have a look at quality first teaching. You haven't got to go off and do an independent task with this, but it's You know, there will be some
Oh,
interaction.
oh,
What are you doing, Lee?
okay.
That's
It-
it.
It's
Okay,
I've got screen issues, Pam. It
You've got
keeps
screen issues.
this is what happens when you buy a cheap HDMI to a USB-C connector. Don't do it, everybody. Okay, you know, buy cheap, buy 7 times, so it keeps going off. I've got upside down screens and all sorts. But anyway, hopefully you can see
Yeah,
that.
we've got a little box in the middle. Yeah,
There we
that's
go. There we are.
brilliant,
We're back
brilliant.
on.
Now, I want to, you know, talk about, you know, this very briefly, really, about quality first teaching. And when there's lots of research being done that if the teaching is of a high quality, and it may be called quality first teaching, inclusive teaching, adaptive teaching, but when the teaching, wave 1, is of a very high quality, then the list of children that might be identified initially as having a need that can't be met can be met through having that quality first teaching. And it's part of that wave 1 approach of making sure that everything there, you know, is in place. And we'll have a look at what that means. But, you know, looking at that, so the teaching might be wonderful, but what other variables could impact on a child not being able to access that high quality teaching? And we've got some of them there. So it says when born, so we know that, you know, summer born children may be at a disadvantage because of the way the school, you know, and especially the research shows summer born boys, and that used to be a category that, you know, that was looked at quite closely, actually, to see where those gaps in learning may be because of that. Self-esteem issues, and this is all going back to the growth mindset as well. When a child is told repeatedly that they can't do something, they will live down to those expectations, and it impacts on their self-esteem. Attendance obviously is going to impact, and that's another massive area, and looking at the different reasons, you know, why a child might have poor attendance, but whatever the reason, it's going to impact on them being able to access that high quality teaching. The teaching may not be pitched at their level. You've already alluded to home life and external factors that are going to impact domestic violence, child protection. English as an additional language, depending on which stage the children are at, might impact. They might have motor skills. And you will find as children get older as well, you know, peer interaction can have a huge impact on it. You know, if they are not making those relationships, if they're falling out with their friends, if they find it difficult to maintain healthy relationships with others, that will become an overriding factor and make it difficult for them to learn. And gaps in learning for whatever reason, you know, they may have had a difficult year where, you know, there are significant gaps in their learning, maybe attendance issues, but all sorts of, you know, it's interesting to see that COVID's in here as well. And I'll link the, you know, the bullying up with the peers. And going back to that assessment part of looking at those variables and things that may not be obvious at first sight, but looking to see if there are other aspects that go with it. Has anyone got any experience of that, of these overlying areas contributing to their lack of progress, not just having a specific educational need or a disability? Has anyone looked into that very closely? Theodora?
From someone who has a lot of experience with early years, I find that early years has a very big focus on developing fine motor skills and gross motor skills. So if there's not been enough nursery time, if the child hasn't had nursery experience, then going off to school, obviously the child won't be able to hold the pen properly. There will be issues there. So fine motor skills are very important.
So their early experiences will have an impact. So if they've had, if they've not been involved in a nursery or a very rich home environment where those things are provided, then they're on a back foot, aren't they, when they start, and especially with the, you know, the expectations, the norms, the routines of going in. So yeah, that's certainly a factor. Becky?
I've got a girl in our class who just really suffers from confidence. So as soon as she's set on an independent task, even if we've demonstrated it on the board, she struggles to start and she struggles to do them in time. So that quick pace curriculum just doesn't support her. She's very able. She just can't. She can't start.
And do you think that's a confidence issue?
Yeah. Because she can verbally tell you, and she knows her knowledge. You can assess her in other ways, but just ticking a box on a bit of paper, is her downfall. She really struggles with that.
And it makes you question, you know, her what's happened in the past for risk taking, doesn't it? And that she may not want to get it wrong. You see those children as well that constantly grab for the rubber, the eraser. They constantly grab for it. They won't take a risk and actually write something down in case it may be wrong. You see that a lot when they've had poor experiences previously. Anybody else noticed anything that has impacted on lack of progress that are outside of those areas, or overlaying and contributing to those areas at all?
I think to jump in as well, they often compound as well. So they sort of, it becomes, you know, for want of a better phrase, like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Do you know what I mean? They've got that, as Becky mentioned there. There's a something preventing that initial engagement, but then that prevents engagement, which leads to further behind, which, you know, you're more or less likely to engage with the learning. Attendance is very similar. In fact, all of these are, and that's why you'll see so many initiatives focused on trying to address such core areas, you know what I mean, around there, because often you could have everything, you know, planned, inclusive teaching in the classroom, but it's what you don't see, it's under that waterline that is actually you know, contributing, you know, prevent the barrier to that child being able to you know, work as effectively as they can do.
And often things that are out of your control as well. That just to be very, very aware of, and have that joined up thinking, and keep talking to everybody, external agencies, and you know, it used to be schools are very much more joined up now. So if there is a safeguarding concern or a child protection concern that's happened maybe at the weekend, then, you know, the systems such as Relay will let the schools know in a timely fashion, so that you know that child's going to come in the morning, and they may be upset, or, you know, that they may not be able to engage in their learning. You know, and things like, you know, has that child, you know, quite often there'll be children that can't engage in their learning until they've eaten something. So, you know, they may not have eaten from the school dinner that they had the previous day, you know, so it's really
it is sometimes the simpler things sometimes that we miss, because and I think this journey of inclusion today, I think, Pam, a little with you, is, you know, we've kind of obviously covered the SEN side in part. We're now, you know, the early bits, and now we're on these other sort of areas that quite often you know, prevent a place being inclusive. You know, if we're not sorting out the relationships amongst friends and whatever else, you know, that can become a massive barrier.
Yeah, and you spend your half an hour after lunch trying to sort out all the friend problems before you can even begin teaching.
Absolutely. I would always advocate, you know, get yourself outside the last 5 or 10 minutes, not because I've told you to, just because, believe me, you know, get it all sorted before they come back in. You know, be around the cloakrooms, be around those pinch points. It just helps to manage everybody's sort of emotions and feelings, rather than, as Pam said, the half an hour when they've come back in after class.
Okay, moving on.
All right.
Now, you know, it will mention this in the code of practice, in the EEF recommendations, that high quality teaching is the starting point. So you could put all the interventions in place, you can do all of these wonderful things, but if the teaching isn't sound and isn't of a high quality, then, you know, progress is likely to be you know, the progress is likely to be delayed, or their needs not met. So it cannot compensate for that high quality teaching. And that's one of the first things that, you know, is looked at. If a school has high numbers of children on their special needs register, it could be absolutely entirely genuine, but it's one of the things that is looked at to see Why? Now, is it because of the teaching, or, you know, what else is going on? So high quality teaching as a wave one approach is the first starting point. And, you know, we've got a couple of slides on this, but again, you know, high quality teaching is something that, you know, we could do a whole week on high quality teaching. And hopefully, you know, through these days that we are gathering all of the information that we can, that you'll eventually will be a cumulative knowledge about what high quality teaching looks like and all the different aspects of it. And this is just some of the, you know, some of the areas here about having those high expectations. I think gone are the days when, you know, people used to say, well, these children can't, you know, because they were talking about a particular demographic or from a particular background where, you know, the expectations were low to start with. These children can't is a phrase I cannot bear. So having high expectations with children will live down or up to your expectations. There's lots of research done around quality feedback, and we'll be having a look at that in more closely on one of our days, at looking at what quality feedback looks like. Importantly, and this is something you can't teach, but developing relationships and knowing the pupils well, you know, that is your starting point for everything. Engagement, scaffolding, we will be looking at, you know, what scaffolding looks like, what it means, what it is, and how you can do it. Making sure that children are engaged, you know, age appropriate, interest appropriate, and ability appropriate. Questioning modelling comes in with the, you know, scaffolding and explanation, and we've talked about an inclusive learning environment. And in the middle of that is all about, you know, developing the children's confidence and their independence and their resilience.
There's a few comments, Pam, that have come in.
Exactly.
I'm struggling to read it because my dodgy HDMI cable has turned it upside down.
All
So
right,
I'm
let
not,
me have a look.
if I'm
So
like this, I can't
see,
quite read
I've
it.
got-
But anyway.
I haven't got any new ones. I've got from the
right, sorry.
previous slide.
I think I must be, because it's upside down, it looked fresh to me. So there we go. Okay, no problem.
So I think moving on, go to the next slide because I'm not sure.
Sorry. Yeah.
Because,
there we go. Oops. There we are.
Okay. And you know, that's reiterating what was on the, you know, the previous slide, and all of these things will be visited in more detail as we go through the program, and you'll also be seeing some of them in your, you know, your webinars and the other training that takes place on your ITAP days. So there will be lots of opportunities to go into this, and I think at your next ITAP, I'm not sure, but I think it might be scaffolding. Questioning, so we will go into more detail about it in the program. So I want to ask you a question. I want you to think about 3 different children just on the back of that, and what you've been thinking about today, and think of a child. Child number 1 has dyslexia and struggles to read black on white and remember facts from the multiplication table. Child number 2 is autistic and is overstimulated by the classroom environment. And child number 3 is ADHD and finds it difficult to concentrate for extended periods of time, or to start or complete work. So thinking about those 3 things, and those 3 examples are in your resource pack, what adaptations could you make? I'm not going to send you off to think about it. Just see what you can think. So a child that struggles to read black on white or read from tables, child that gets overstimulated by the environment, and a child that cannot concentrate, not for any extended amount of time. What would you do? Put something in the chat. Well, just pick on one of them. If you're struggling to think about all 3 of them together, just pick on one of them and think what you might do for that one child.
Suitable seating and printed larger versions.
Oh, and that's for the child who struggles to read black on white.
Yes, and yeah, printed larger version with the color code, and yes.
Thanks, Shamila. Becky has said also you can get different coloured pastel paper. The child who can't read black and white, you can. Font colour changes, yes. Movement breaks if easily distracted. Different colour fonts. We have that, yeah, the colour sheets. Movement breaks again. Opportunity for time away. Yeah. What about the overstimulating classroom? Is there anything you could actually do about that? Yes, time away, but what else could you do? What do you see in classrooms?
Reduce the displays which hang out, and less noise level environment.
Thank you, Shamila. So be aware of noise levels. Yeah, be aware of the environment, the physical environment, how overstimulating it could be. I like some of these. Who's put get rid of unnecessary stuff, use less colours, remove displays and overstimulating items, calm music. I like the calm music. I've used it a lot myself, but sometimes that can actually aggravate a condition with that cognitive overload. Minimal classrooms. Yeah, I'm seeing more and more of that. Less is more. Just trying to look at them. They've gone up a bit. Calm corner, remove excess stuff. That clutter. Small group activities. Use soft lighting, clear tables. You get the idea, don't you? And the pre-teaching one, Marianne, for a child who struggles with focus, to be given a task list beforehand so they're aware of what's coming up. Pre-teaching, preparing, yes. Keeping the classroom tidy, absolutely. Meditation, lighting, teacher voice levels. It's always interesting to see that when you observe teachers, because your own personality comes into play. You can't help that. And when you have a very excitable teacher, gets really enthusiastic and really, and the voice levels go up, and you see a very overexcited class. And when you have a teacher who speaks really calmly, very measured, you have a very calm class, and it has a direct impact. Unfortunately, I'm an overexcited teacher. And so whenever I teach, I have to really calm myself down because I see them reacting. And it used to happen with assemblies as well. I think the teachers used to think, oh, please don't let Pam do the assembly. Can't calm them down afterwards. So thinking about your voice levels, thinking about how you are in front of the class can overstimulate some children. Children notice face expressions more than the voice and tone expressions. Okay, thank you. So I think you've got the idea there, and thank you for contributing as we get towards the end of the day. We'll go to the next slide, and then we've got the sort of the recommendations for that high quality teaching about, and building on the things that we've talked about. That number 3, ensure all pupils have access to high quality teaching, and this is the rising tide sails all ships sort of analogy, that the better the teaching is, the more children are going to be able to access it. And good teaching for pupils with SEND is good teaching for all. So all about inclusive teaching. And I won't read all through of those. I'll give you a moment to have a look at those recommendations from the EEF. And if you want to comment on them, then please comment on them before we move into our evaluating stage. It's a very difficult slide to access, to be fair. I think the one that's most contentious there at the moment would be number 5.
Yes.
With reduced funding in schools. This is the biggest issue that seems to be hitting schools at the moment. reduced funding and not enough teaching assistants, or teaching assistants. Some schools are overrun with teaching assistants, but they're not used effectively. So, you know, that's something to consider as we go through. We'll be looking at that in more detail as we go through the programme as well. So anything to comment on there before we move into, you're all thinking, no, come on, Pam, get on with it now, because we're all tired. I can tell by your contribution levels. So should we move on, Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, essentially, it's over to you now. Obviously, Pam and I will stay on the call. You know, if people want to come and have a chat and speak to us about any of the content or anything that we've raised today, we'd love to do that one. If you have sort of, you know, pretty much, you know, got everything from this, you can go away. There are some little takeaway things that you're being asked to look at. There's some, you know, you've got to reflect on the discussion forum, which again is on your mosaic. So please put a comment on there. And it's thinking about the EEF's 5-a-day adaptive teaching approaches. So that's explicit instruction, cognitive metacognitive strategy, scaffolding, flexible grouping using technology. So please do go onto the discussion forum. It does form part of your kind of ongoing assessment, as Pam will say, that you're, you know, reflecting upon the learning that you're having. So that's one job that needs to be done. The final thing that's also sort of shows that engagement and attendance on the course is your evaluation. You should have had an email probably this morning when we did the register, I guess around about 9:30ish, Pam, was it possibly? I think it comes from
around. And it will go to your personal email or the email that you originally signed up with?
We think it's your personal one, candidate and something. I think it's candidate and
associates.
Candidates and candidate and partners.
Thanks
so
to you, Laura.
Yeah, we've got that evaluation for you to be done. So obviously there's time set aside for you to respond on that forum and to please do your evaluation to help mark your attendance at the session. I've really enjoyed today, especially your insightful knowledge. And I mentioned to Pam in one of the breakout rooms what you know, to have such an aware and kind of, you know, willing cohort of new teachers coming into the profession. You know, it's really great. So thank you all for that. And I say we learn as much from you as hopefully you take from the materials from Pam and myself. But from me, thank you ever so much. I will stay on the call. Pam, I don't know if you'd like to close the session. You opened it. We'll let you close it.
Yeah, I just echo what you've said, Lee. It's really great. It makes all the difference to a day to have that responsiveness, because it could be a very, very dry day without the contributions and the back and forth and the dialogue. So thank you for that. It really does make a difference to everybody who's on the programme. So thank you. And like Lee said, we'll stick around if you've got any questions. We'll stick around for a bit. And somebody's just asked a question about what is the name of the discussion forum? You see that?
I'll go onto that screen there. It's EEF's 5-a-day. So it will be under, if you go onto the forums, you'll have this day, which the name of the training day as the title, and then the forum will be in there. That was a really good explanation, that, Lee, wasn't it? I think that was that was.
I think
very clear.
I think they understand.
I hope so.
So we'll see you. What's the next date, Lee? What's the next date?
We are. Oh gosh, you're asking me now. I think it's in February sometime. So I'm pretty sure that it is next Wednesday. Oh no, maybe not. Oh, it's on the 4th of March. And that's Pit 3 day, and mine just says Pit 3 at the moment. I think it's cognition and learning, isn't it? I think, is that right? Possibly. Or yeah. Believe me, we will be well drilled when it arrives. Okay, we'll know exactly what's going on. But thank you so much.
Everyone. Thank you.
And we're stopping around, but have a great evening and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. Bye.